What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto became the forbidden love of Serafall Leviathan and triggered a war among the Saiyans? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. When the word underworld was spoken, many would instantly think of a dark, frightening and a vile place where fire and molten lava were blazing at each and every turn and the air was filled with toxic compounds and whatnot. It indeed was an apt description for a place known as purgatory. However, it wasn't the truth, as the underworld was very different from what many believed it to be like. Therefore, those who hadn't been to the underworld would have been incredibly surprised, even shocked perhaps, to find out that the mentioned place was nothing like what they had thought. Instead, it was very similar to Earth, the human world with the exception of the sky, that was purple, in the underworld. The underworld was enormous, easily the size of Earth, without sea, just wide lakes to make up for the lack of sea. Contrary to popular beliefs, it was situated in a different dimension, not underground, as its name would suggest. Its land varied from cities to grasslands, fields to farmlands, forests etc. Though one thing many were correct in thinking, was that the underworld was home to the devils, the dark race of beings that had been greatly misunderstood by many as nothing more than evil beings. Devils, however, were just like regular humans but with the addition of bat-like wings on their backs and an array of different abilities that could be used for either good or evil purposes. They also have enhanced physical abilities such as strength, endurance, speed, and senses. They could even live for thousands of years and retain a youthful appearance. It made the devils a near-perfect species. Devils have had many enemies, but their greatest enemies were the angels of heaven and the ones known as fallen angels. Angels that had given into their sinful nature and had fallen from heaven, which created a new species of supernatural beings. The three factions of angels, devils, and fallen angels warred against one another under the leaderships of the biblical God, the four great Satans, and the fallen angel organization, Grigori, led by the fallen angel Azazel in a conflict which came to be known as the Great War. When the war eventually ended, each side had suffered great losses, leaving the three factions in a state of conflict. However, due to the state of extreme exhaustion after the Great War and with all three factions losing their main forces, neither of the three sides wanted to continue battling. So, while there was no peace between the factions, outright battles did not occur either. Many years later, after the death of the four original Satans, Underworld fell into a civil war. On one side were the Satan families who wanted to continue their fight against the angels and the fallen angels, while on the other side were the remaining of most prominent devils' houses known as the 72 Pillars, that had been reduced to 34 now, who wanted peace and a new order. The conflict lasted for a few years until eventually, 5 devils from 5 different houses all stood together, pushed back the old government faction and secured the war in favor of the new government faction. The government that hoped that the new generation could live in peace and harmony, without the horrors of war. These 5 devils being Sirzechs Gremory, Ajuka Astaroth, Serafall Leviathan, Falbium Glacia Labelas, finally the one who led, trained them, Naruto Fenix. Though young, each one of them possessed incredible strength that left many shaking where they stood and could decimate entire countries, if they wanted to. Each had their own set of skills and power. While individually they were powerful no doubt, together they were near invincible. Though the final battle was enough to show them that even one of them was more than enough, and quickly became the spear point in the battle against the old government, Satan faction. The 5 were very close to each other. Especially Sirzechs Gremory, Ajuka Astaroth and Naruto Fenix, the strongest of the group. Though Sirzechs and Ajuka would never admit it out loud, they knew that Naruto was far more powerful than all of them combined. A point which was proven correct by him during the final battle of the Civil War. With Sirzechs' mutated power of destruction, Ajuka with his Kankara formula, and Naruto's power of immortality and golden energy mistaken as golden flame, the 3 quickly became names that struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. Naruto Fenix, however, was the glue that tied them together and made them almost inseparable. The Civil War had taken its toll on every devil alive, but eventually the new government faction prevailed, with Naruto landing the final and deciding blow to Rizivom Lucifer and securing the victory for the new devil faction. With this, the old government faction retreated and hid, and the underworld quickly began to change under its new management. With the leaders of underworld gone, The 5 most powerful individuals stepped up to take responsibility of the underworld, i.e. to protect each and every citizen that lived and breathed in their homeland. However, the most shocking news came out when everyone was told that Naruto Fenix, the infamous prince of the underworld, had left his homeland. It was a well-known fact that if he had been there, he probably would have been named the next Lucifer, because between him and Sirzechs, everyone knew who was more respected, favored and feared. It was disheartening for everyone, especially the ones that were close to him. But then again, they couldn't do anything, as they knew that once Naruto had made his mind, very few individuals could change it, and to top it all, most of these individuals were dead. Afterwards his leaving, the underworld moved on and rebuilt. The remaining 4 heroes of the Devil Civil War took up the mantle of the old Satans and became the new 4 great Satans, with Sirzechs being the leader of the 4 and taking up the mantle of Lucifer, while Ajuka took Beelzebub, Serafall took Leviathan and Falbium took Asmodeus. Sometime after Naruto's disappearance, Ajuka created the evil pieces. With so few pure-blooded devil left and half of the 72 pillars now extinct, they needed to repopulate the underworld somehow. That eventually led to the creation of Evil Peace System, a system that allowed humans and other creatures, beings, to be reincarnated and turned into devils, with the exception of extremely powerful beings like a Buddha or a dragon god. Ajuka had given the first prototype of Evil Pieces to his best friends and comrades in arms. The prototype Evil Pieces were different from the normal Evil Pieces, as its power wasn't being limited, unlike the widespread Evil Pieces that were currently in use. However, Naruto's set of evil pieces were entirely different than the other 4 sets Ajuka had created. All of its pieces were mutated, and Ajuka was yet to understand the reason behind it. Ajuka only had unproved conclusion that Naruto was hundreds of times more powerful than he had shown to everyone, and his evil pieces mutated because of their owner's absurd power. In the past 2 centuries, everyone was wondering about the whereabouts of the pride of the House of Fenix. Many of older generation hoped that the prince of the underworld will come back soon, while the new generation wanted to know more about the living legend and the strongest devil in existence. Fortunately for them, they will see him soon. Phoenix Castle. Official wedding night. Leaning on one of the pillars of the spacious hall, Naruto Fenix, or Uzumaki Naruto before his reincarnation as the heir of the House of Fenix, was watching the battle between his sorry excuse of little brother and Securite Hyodo Issei, the new pawn of Rias Gremory, the little sister of his old buddy. His appearance hasn't changed since the time he disappeared from his home. He still had an appearance of a young man in his late teens with silky blonde hair. The only exception being a few silver strands among the blonde mop and a white eye patch over his left eye. No one had been able to feel his presence, not even his dear old friend Serafall Lucifer and his adoptive little sister, Graphia Lucifuge. The funny thing was that he wasn't even trying to hide his presence, but he had made sure to keep his powers at minimum for the time being, and was simply standing with his partner, who would be described sometime later. Naruto came to a conclusion that normal clothes really do help a lot in blending in, as he watched the brown-haired reincarnated devil fighting his spoiled little brother with imperfect balance breaker of Longinus class sacred gear, the boosted gear. As he was watching the fight, his mind drifted to the artifacts biblical God created. Especially, the 12 anomalies in the sacred gear system called the Longinus. Artifacts that can kill gods, he pondered silently. If I didn't know better, I would say that God was trying to make a fail-safe for some really serious threat in future. He closed his eyes, or eye in his case, for a moment before it snapped open and locked onto Securite's figure. To think that she would take him. It makes my plan more complicated. Do you think Securite will win, Master? A young woman's voice whispered the question. Naruto glanced to his right from the corner of his single eye and saw the red-haired young woman who was leagues more beautiful than Rias Gremory. This was his queen, his only member of peerage, Pamela Isley. Now, one may ask that if he left the underworld before the invention of evil pieces, then how in the world did he make this person his queen, right? It will be answered soon. I have feeling he will. Is it because of the ability of the boosted gear to multiply its power to almost limitless? No, it is because my guts feeling told me. Wha guts feeling? Are you serious right now, Master? The attractive redhead asked in a disbelieving tone. There, Pam. When was it that my gut's feeling had been wrong? Pamela Isley, or Pam as he liked to call her, was an attractive young woman with hair lighter shade than the Gremarys. She let her hair fall freely behind her. She was wearing a green-colored top that showed her porcelain-skinned shoulder and pronounced her massive bust. Her lower attire consisted of a dark-colored miniskirt and a pair of black-colored leggings that hugged her alluring legs tightly. Finally, her feet were covered by a pair of brown leather shoes. Pam tried to retort, but nothing came to her mind. She just threw her face away with a huff, earning an amused chuckle from Naruto. She then sighed in resignation. Her king and master figure was right. It was weird when Pamela thought of Naruto as her master, and yet she wouldn't even bat an eyelash whenever they were making love. Naruto had asked her to why she kept him calling master, and her answer was, "Because you saved me when I had given up on life, and as such, my everything belongs to you. Therefore, master. By the way," she began changing the topic of their conversation, "why don't you show yourself and greet your family? Didn't you disappear like 2 centuries ago? And I too want to meet them, you know." Naruto kept his eye trained on the match going on in front of them, all the while pondering upon the question asked by Pam. He actually felt bad when he left his family and friends, comrades behind and just disappeared like that. However, there were many reasons behind his leaving. First, was his search for the answer to the question, why was a pure-blooded devil like him born with chakra, and that too like, infinite amount of it? Second, was the question related to his dreams, in which he was Naruto Uzumaki and did things like fighting a primordial goddess and whatnot. Were they real? Obviously there were many more questions that he had in his mind that needed answering, but some questions took priority over the others. During his aimless journey, he had stumbled upon an overgrown lizard in a place which he was told is called the Dimensional Gap. The lizard was there to stop anyone who wished to go to different dimensions. The dragon had respected him and only him alone. It wouldn't let anyone aside from him to pass the boundary between worlds. Even then, Naruto had no intention of jumping into other dimensions. Just once he did so, and fortunately, it was where he found his super sweet queen. Naruto was told by the reptile that he was protecting his kin by keeping the existence of other worlds a secret by acting as a guard. Or perhaps guardian would be more fitting, since anyone wanting to go to the other dimensions would be like a sheep waiting to be slaughtered by Dragon of Apocalypse. The fight between him and the DXD was a really close one. If he had wasted another second in unlocking Uzumaki Naruto's 6 paths power, he wouldn't have been here, watching his sorry excuse of third little brother, getting his ass kicked from a devil whom hadn't been a devil for 2 months straight. Naruto hated seeing his family like this, losing. Don't get him wrong, while he was against the arranged marriage thing, he didn't like the fact that when this all will be over, it will be his family that will be made fun of, and that was something he can't stand. Not to mention the fact that it will be all because of someone's arrogance and attitude problems. When he was young, he made sure that his family's name stood right beside the Satan ones, but now, oh well, he will make sure to teach his little brother a lesson when he meets him, officially. I think, he stated after a moment of thinking, I will show myself when the main threat of this world shows its ugly face. He looked at Hyodo Issei intently, as the Sekiryute outstretched his hand toward his sister who was standing in front of the reincarnated devil. Hyodo Issei was a plain Japanese teenager, with a perverted mind beyond comprehension. Naruto never knew someone who loved as worse as him. At first Naruto thought Issei was Jiraiya's reincarnation but banished that idea immediately. He then wondered if Issei was actually a bastard child of one of the pervert gods like Zeus, Odin, or maybe even the lazy governor of fallen angel faction, Azazel. But it was just absurd, and to be frank, Issei's mother was an adequate-looking housewife and those perverts have high standards. Issei was actually a simple boy born in a simple family. No notable heritage, just plain human who was unfortunate enough because he was the host of Welsh Dragon, Diedrich. His appearance was as plain as his background. Brown hair with light brown eyes and a flaky body build. His height was normal, given the Japanese standards. Looking at him almost made him sad. The poor boy just entered a very dangerous world without even knowing about it. He wanted to ensure world future, but he couldn't just storm into everything like a mad bull, like he used to do as Uzumaki Naruto. As Uzumaki Naruto, his enemies were pretty much clear, but in this world, many enemies suited to be called monsters were hiding behind the scenes, waiting for the right moment to pounce like a dangerous viper, though he was pretty much sure who was behind all this. Not to mention he hated slimy and coward enemies. By God, they sucked. Don't be surprised if he wasn't in pain when he used the word God. Six Paths power, deep inside him, had turned him into a super devil with no downside. He didn't share the weakness to light-based elements, like a normal devil does. Naruto had no complaints regarding EsssCeee though, rather, he was happy that a person like EsssCeee had been born, and one could say that he had been waiting for something like this. People like EsssCeee were rare, not talking about his unhealthy fascination to no, but his approach to life. Naruto saw many things in EsssCeee. Firstly, EsssCeee was a dumb idiot. Then, he was a massive pervert. Furthermore, he had a tool that has the power to kill gods. So in short, a dumb idiot and a massive pervert with a god-killer tool. Rather scary combination, but, beneath all that, there was a simple boy who wanted to survive and live, who wanted people around him to be happy and was ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of others, and this quality alone was the reason that Naruto had let him live. He respected that sort of mindset. Then again he started wondering, maybe he could do something like training the kid? Well, it was a good idea and he put it at the back of his mind for later reference. He narrowed his lone eye at the Red Dragon Emperor, and the brown-haired reincarnated devil froze in fear. He then turned to Pam. "We're done here," he said, grabbing Pam's shoulder. They then disappeared in a blink of an eye without leaving a trace of their presence there, but what Naruto didn't know was the effect of his little stunt when he tried to stop Sekiryu from harming his little sister. Meanwhile, in the party after Naruto and Pam disappeared, Hyodo Issei suddenly collapsed on the floor with his whole body shaking. His sweat drenched his Kuo Academy uniform. Tears poured down his cheeks. He had peed in his pants as the smell of urine scattered in the air. "Hey, Sekiryu, what's wrong with you?" Revel Fenix asked out loud, startled because his body just went limp all of a sudden. Revel was a very attractive petite girl with a pair of big S for someone as young as her. She had a pair of dark blue eyes, a trait shared by most of the Fenix family members. Her blonde-colored hair was styled in drill-like pigtails, tied together with a pink ribbon. She also had a V-shaped fringe covering her forehead. As of now, she was wearing a beautiful and elegant pink dress with white frills. 3 accessories that looked like phoenix tails jutted out from the backside of her dress. Her voice snapped everyone out from the trance of amazement that was caused due to the Sekiryu winning against the third son of the House of Fenix. Eyes. Rias Gremory let out a startled scream as her pawn was suddenly hit by an intense pulsation. She then closed the distance between them, ignoring the disgusting smell of urine that stung her nose. Rias Gremory was also an attractive young female devil with Gremory's trademark hair, pair of startling blue-green eyes, slender body, pair of big and perky busts, wide hips, and beautiful thighs and calves. She was currently wearing a crimson dress that showed her back and separated elegant sleeves. Eyes, are you okay?" She grabbed his body. She was worried for her pawn's safety. Her other servants were just behind her, also worried about the perverted pawn's well-being. "Oni-sama, what happened to Eyes?" she asked her brother, shaking Eyes' body. When she didn't get a response from her brother, she turned her head to face him and was surprised to see her big brother and his queen frozen stiff on their spot. "Oni-sama, Graphia, what happened? Don't just stand there like statues," she shouted, snapping them out of their trance. "Medic, take my sister's pawn for treatment." Her brother immediately commanded the nearby devil healers. The paramedics immediately did what Serafall Lucifer commanded them to. Rias Gremory and her entire peerage followed the paramedics with Sona Citri and her queen, Shinra Tsubaki, trailing them. The Lord of Devil looked around the room with a searching gaze. His blue-green eyes showing varying emotions from curiosity, expectant, sadness, to hope. He was biting his thumbnail, a habit which he had had from his younger days, but one that had been rarely showing up in these past years. His forehead scrunched in deep concentration as he kept looking around. Sirzechs' appearance was like a handsome young man with hair color that he shared with his father and sister. He was like a male version of his little sister. He was donning a white gentleman's suite under his golden and gray-colored ornate armor. Next to him, Graphia Lucifuge was doing something similar to her husband. Her eyes swept over the room while she was biting her lower lip. Her usual cold mask slipped and replaced by various expressions. Graphia Lucifuge was a beautiful devil with an appearance of a young lady in her early to mid-20s. She had silver hair with similar colored eyes. Her curvaceous body was covered by blue and white French-made outfit complete with a headband. Sirzechs, Graphia, what happened to Securite? I understand from both of your expressions that you know what happened to him. Zekocius Gremory, the lord of the house of Gremory, questioned his son and daughter-in-law. Behind him Venelana Gremory ne Bael also looked perplexed, wondering what made her son and his wife so worried. Venelana was Sirzechs and Rias' mother and Zekocius's wife. She was the exact replica of her daughter except for her brown-colored hair that were only shoulder-length. She was wearing a white elegant dress befitting for a noble lady of her stature. Sirzechs Lucifer began unsurely. Felt his presence just a little moment ago when Securite was suddenly frozen in his spot. He turned his head to his wife. Did you feel it too, Via? Yes. But he has been gone for about 2 centuries now and no one has ever heard anything about him. Young devils around them were all confused, wondering what or rather who the elders were talking about. However, Zekocius Gremory, Venelana Gremory, and Lord and Lady Fenix, who were nearby, immediately understood what Sirzechs Lucifer and his wife meant. Are you sure, Lord Lucifer? Relina Fenix, lady of the house of Fenix and Revel's mother, questioned with a gasp. Her hands unconsciously covering her mouth and her tone becoming shaky. Next to her, her husband turned pale. Relina was a beautiful young woman who, despite being many centuries old, still looked to be in her early to mid-30s, with her hair held up in an ornate fashion and blue eyes that all her children seemed to have inherited. She wore a beautiful and elegant red dress. She looked nothing short of a queen and had the power in spades to back up the title as well. Revel, who was just as confused as everyone else, finally asked her parents. Mama, what is going on? I think we should talk about this elsewhere. Venelana, the only reserved adult between them, said. In actuality, she was just as shaken as her husband, her son, her daughter-in-law, Lord and Lady Fenix were, but she hid it well. She turned to the party guests and said out loud, Everyone, we are sorry for being such a bad host. Something urgent has come up and we all will be taking our leave. However, there is no need for you all to worry. So, please enjoy yourself as the night is still rather young. With that, Sirzechs, the Gremorys, the Fenigs, and the confused Riser Fenix servants moved out of the party hall. The guests immediately broke out in a hushed conversation, speculating what just happened as their host vanished into the corridor. A little moment later in the corridor. Oni-sama, I need your time for something of utmost importance. Rias Gremory called out in the corridor when she saw her big brother and the group following behind him. What is it, Rias? Welsh dragon inside Isis, sacred gear, wanted to speak with you about something. I was surprised when I heard it talk from the gauntlet on Isis' left arm. It seemed afraid about something. Sirzechs Lucifer darted his eyes towards the adults of the group. He nodded at them and motioned Rias to lead the way. They arrived in a lavish room to find Rias Gremory's peerage along with Sona Citri and her queen waiting for them. As they entered the room, a gruff voice greeted them from the sleeping Hyodo Issei's gauntlet. You felt it, right? Current Lucifer, you felt that monster's presence? Don't you dare call him a monster, Welsh dragon. Everyone in the room was taken aback by the venom in the Lucifer's tone. Rias Gremory, mostly because she never knew her brother to be as spiteful as this. I can say whatever I want and he is a monster. He'd slaughtered 3 generations of my and White One's hosts in row. He also has a presence that is as scary as the freaking DXD of all beings. How you do not call him a monster is just beyond me. The Welsh dragon Diedrich said indignantly. The adults were both surprised and shocked by Diedrich's sudden outburst while the young devils in the room were still lost. Sirzechs' anger also ceased to exist in an instant. No wonder there hadn't been news of heavenly dragons fight in the past century. Zekocius Gremory touched his chin with a pensive emotion and mused out loud. As lord of the house of Gremory, he was a charismatic individual with trademark Gremory's hair that were tied in a low ponytail. He had an appearance of man in his early to mid-30s with his light beard. He was currently wearing white gentleman suite with blue sash over his hips and an ornate sword for the sake of appearance. Then it is good, isn't it? I mean, the lack of destruction caused due to the rivalry of the heavenly dragons. Grafia jibed in. The thought was shared by almost everyone in the room. Do you know how important our fight is? And besides, he is far more destructive than we two are. Diedrich replied with a miffed tone from EsssCee's boosted gear. Wait a minute, Sirzechs half shouted. What do you mean? He also has a presence that is as scary as the freaking DXD of all being. I know he is a scary fellow, probably too scary, but not that scary, right? He asked in a slightly scared tone. You don't know Lucifer. He was very terrifying. In fact, White One's previous host before his current one was supposed to be the strongest in history, and he just utterly destroyed both of our hosts in mere seconds. Now tell me, how he is not a monster by what he's done so far. I don't know, what are you insinuating, Welsh dragon? Ronald Fenix, the Lord of House of Fenix, asked with his eyes narrowing at the talking gauntlet. There, gentlemen. Venelana successfully stopped the spat between her son, the Lord of the House of Fenix, and the dragon inside her daughter's pawn. Can we talk about this with a cool head and like civilized individuals? I think we are creating an unsightly scene in front of the younglings. Like Venelana said, the young devils were very much in confusion about the subject that was being discussed. Mostly Rias and Sona because of their curiosity, a trait that they inherited from their parents. Although, Rias became more anxious and concerned when she heard about the mysterious individual that had killed previous host of heavenly dragons. She was worried that this strong individual may decide to kill her pawn next. So, what are you two arguing about in the first place? Asked a lost Revel. She had been standing there silently with Isabella, Riser's rook. Confusion was clear on her youthful face, something which all of Riser's peerage shared. Why, of course, it was that scary-ass fried chicken from your house, little devil. Diedrich's tone dripped with sarcasm. Don't you go bad-mouthing the House of Fenix, Welsh dragon. Even if you're one of heavenly dragons, I won't let you do that. More importantly, if the subject is my firstborn son. Relena Fenix raised her voice, finally losing her patience due to Diedrich's antagonism. Orange-colored aura blazed around her and the temperature in the room spiked dangerously. Everyone around took a step back from the usually happy-go-lucky Lady Fenix because of how fearsome she currently was. Dear, please calm down. Ronald Fenix tried to calm down his wife. The Lord of the House of Fenix had an appearance of handsome and charismatic man in middle to late 30s. He was clad in a white formal suite embroidered with golden threads and the crest of the House of Fenix. He had blonde hair and blue eyes like every other pure-blooded devils of the House of Fenix. He was actually seething deep inside, but he had good control over his emotions as Diedrich kept bad-mouthing his prided son. Damn young devils these days don't have any respect for elders. Che, Diedrich grumbled morosely. However, the adults kept their face firm. The Welsh dragon decided to go back to its jail inside the boosted gear. There wasn't any reason for him to speak with them anymore if they didn't help to bring justice to the one who disturbed the dispute between him and his rival. Well, it's not like the others shared his problem. To be honest, they were happy with the lack of havoc caused due to their dispute. But don't they get it? That damn Fenix is even more dangerous than them. Mama, Papa, do you mean to say that I have another elder brother that I don't know about? Revel asked. She came to this conclusion after her mother's previous statement. She was a very smart individual and her grade in Devil School for heir and heiress in the capital city of Underworld, Lilith, were a proof of it. It was easy to deduce since Ruval wasn't powerful enough to make the Welsh dragon scared. And don't even get her started on Riser. He was anything but dangerous. Relena snapped from her mood swing and stared at her hands for a few minutes. Then, she inhaled deeply and looked into her husband's blue eyes. When Ronald nodded, giving his approval for what his wife was going to do, Relena turned her face to her only daughter and sighed in resignation. Her face was sad, something Revel rarely saw. Revel, my dear, we're sorry to keep the existence of your eldest brother a secret. But, after his disappearance, it was too painful remembering him. We tried our best to keep it under wraps as much as we can, and we, the elders of the remaining 72 pillars, decided to change the history script about devils, mostly around the time of the Civil War. Losing your big brother was our biggest blow next to the death of previous Satans, exclaimed Relena to a wide-eyed Revel. Wait, just how much of the history was changed by you elders? A scandalized Sona asked. She had straightened her posture when she heard about changing historical script. The adults looked sullen and glanced at one another, confusing the young devils. It was Sirzechs who opened his mouth. Not too much, I fear. It was nearly impossible to hide his existence fully. He was the center of the civil war and the one who made the current 4 great Satans what they are now. He said with a wistful smile and a faraway look. Don't tell me he's the prince of the underworld. Himejima Kuno speculated. Himejima Kuno was Ria's queen, and her best friend besides Sona Citri. She was an attractive buxom young woman with black hair tied in a ponytail with the help of an orange ribbon. She was wearing black formal kimono that still showed her hourglass figure. She was also the one who had the biggest pair of S in the room. Grafia nodded with a sad smile, surprising the young devils present. Actually, it was pretty easy to deduce the famous Prince of Underworld, as he was like a heroic figure which appeared in history books of the underworld, even if his true identity was never revealed. My eldest brother is the hero of Underworld? A disbelieving Revel murmured. She was shaken when she heard that she had an elder brother before Ruval, but to know that her long-lost eldest brother is actually her childhood hero. That just blew everything through the roof. I understand it was big blow to us after losing someone as famous and powerful as him. But changing the history book to hide his existence, honestly? Sona rubbed her temple, feeling the slowly rising headache. Well, seeing how your sister currently is, I think it was a good move on our part. Replied Zecocious Gremory with a lame shrug. And what exactly do you mean by that? Sona questioned with eyes narrowing in suspicion. You know, your sister fancied him very much. She used to follow him like a lost puppy whenever he trained us or whenever we trained together. In fact, she was trying her hardest to ditch her nerdy and bookish lifestyle just for the sake of getting his praise alone. Sirzechs told the young heiress. A nostalgic smile on his face. What? Sona shouted loudly as she heard the bomb dropped by the Lucifer. Well, do you think that Sarafal was a troublemaker when she was young? To be honest, she was more nerdy wire than you. I don't know how and what happened, but someday I heard that Sunshine Head telling Sarafal that life is much more than bookish knowledge, and if you want to do something great or remarkable, you first need to get out of the library. The Lucifer tried his best to imitate the blonde Fenix, chuckling to himself. Sona, who had a short circuit, stood rooted in her place. Mimicking a robot, she moved to the nearby seat and sat silently. Her mind couldn't comprehend the fact that her sister was actually a bookworm and a nerd when she was young. That was just the exact opposite of how she is now. It was a world-shattering truth for her. She just couldn't believe it. Anyo. Excuse me, but Sunshine Head, asked a confused Revel. Venelana giggled in amusement before replying to the only daughter of Ronald and Relina Fenix. It was Sirzechs' nickname for him. Sirzechs, Ajuka, and your oldest brother already knew each other before they could even talk. They were always together. Then Sarafal joined the 3 troublemakers and Falbium followed sometimes later. Ahahahaha. Talking about this reminds me of the fact that the current 4 great Satans were actually just innocent, young and confused heirs and heiress of their families in the past. Ronald laughed boisterously. You're right, my friend. I just can't believe that the shy and timid Serafall turned out like she currently is and the frail little boy of the house of Glacia Labelas became our Lord Asmodeus. Zecocious added with a chuckle. Mama, Papa, Lord Gremory, Lady Gremory, and Lord Lucifer. Revel's timid voice took the adult's attention. Could all of you tell me about my eldest brother? She asked almost pleadingly. Of course, Revel. I will tell you as much as you want. After all, I am your god brother as my mother is your eldest brother's godmother. Stated Sirzechs, surprising Revel and Rias. The surprises kept on increasing. It was like the adults were having some kind of sick competition that said, screw their minds. Hold on, Rias said out loud when something finally clicked in her mind. She ignored Revel, whose eyes narrowed at the redhead because her chance to hear about her eldest brother had been suspended by her. Don't tell me that my engagement with Riser was because all of you wanted the house of Gremory and Fenix finally tied in familial ties. When Rias saw her father and big brother's expression that screamed, guilty, she swore out loud in an unladylike fashion. Damn it, just who did you think I am? Did you think I am just a mere tool to fill your ego? Language, Rias. Venelena's sharp word and an equally sharp look from Grafia forced Rias's mouth to shut tight. But her displeasure and the feeling of being betrayed were still very much visible through the scowl on her face. "I'm sorry, Lord Fenix. Lady Fenix, for my daughter's unsightly mannerism." Venelana apologized to Ronald and Relina. The Lord and Lady Fenix just waved it off. "Don't worry, Venelana. At the end of the day, it was still a win-win situation for us," Ronald said with a gentleman's smile. "What do you mean?" Rias was in confusion because of Lord Fenix's word. It was Relina who answered, the heiress of the House of Gremory. "To be honest, when we signed the contract, Riser was still a sweet little boy. It was in our mind to unite House of Fenix and Gremory with a marriage contract between my youngest son and you, Rias Gremory. However, Riser turned into an arrogant young man because of House of Fenix immortality. Now that I think about it, I believe that it was a good thing that we didn't tell you all about our firstborn, or else his ego would have been far more worse. We had already deduced that you will find a way to release yourself from the marriage contract. So, we decided that if Riser were to lose, it will teach him some humility, and if he wins, our houses will unite like we wanted them to. Thus, a win-win situation. With all due respect, Lady Fenix, do you know what would have happened if I ended up as his wife? The rest of my life would have been filled with sadness and grief. However, you are free from the marriage contract, aren't you?" Relina pressed with an amused look. Rias could only accept begrudgingly. "Knowing your elder brother, we knew that he will do something to save his beloved little sister. You reincarnating Securite as your servant just smoothed out his plan, to be honest." Ronald chimed in, forcing Rias to hold back her argument. "Well, that was a good strategy on your behalf, I guess," Sona murmured when suddenly few more people entered the room. "That's not it, Sona. The prince of the underworld is also your god brother," came a new voice. Everyone turned to see none other than Lady Cetri along with Lord Cetri and Serafall Leviathan coming through the door. "Yeah, so Tan Tilda, he is your god brother Tilda," Serafall said in a sing-song tone as she glomped her sister, much to her embarrassment. "Well, since we are playing surprise the heck out of them, then I might as well add that he is also the godfather of little Malikas," Sirzechs told everyone, yet surprising them even more, as if they were not already surprised enough. Each of the young one gave the Lucifer a dry look that said, "Really? Excuse me?" spoke Revel with a rising tone. She had an annoyed expression on her face and was glaring scornfully at Rias, who blinked quite a few times, wondering what made the youngest Fenix so angry. Rias pondered if she had problem about what happened to Riser. However, she decided it wasn't about it. "What is it, Revel?" she asked, wanting to know the young Fenix reason for sending such a look at her. "Could you just shut up about your already solved engagement problems? It is over now, isn't it?" Revel complained scathingly. "I just wanted to hear about my long-lost brother, but everyone just butted in, denying my chance to listen about him." Everyone in the room blinked at the only daughter of Ronald and Relina in astonishment. No one ever saw Revel showing such a sharp tongue, as she was always acting reserved and haughty in the past. "You know, her sharp tongue is your fault, honey, and it seems your skills are getting dull since you were not able to sense him of all people," Ronald murmured lowly but loud enough for everyone to listen. "What was that, my dearest husband?" Relina said with a sickly sweet smile that spoke certain doom if her husband dared speaking something stupid next time, but she guessed that her husband was right when he said that her sensing abilities have gone dull. "Ahahaha. Nothing, nothing." The Lord of the House of Fenix chuckled nervously. He then decided to change the topic and said, "So, how about we sit down and relax first before we have a nostalgic flashback of my eldest son, nay?" Everyone immediately agreed with Ronald's brilliant idea. They have been standing for almost 30 minutes without knowing, and their feet have started demanding a rest as the excitement had finally lessened. One by one they took seat on the couch in the room. Some were conjuring a comfortable and expensive couch with help of magic. When everyone was seated comfortably, Relina cleared her throat and began the tale. Revel and the younger generation immediately put their utmost attention. Hell, even some of the elders were eager to hear about the childhood of the prince, because they themselves didn't know much about it. All they knew was that Naruto was a very cryptic person. GOAT. It began on the 10th of October in the early 18th century, Relina began with a faraway look. Her husband squeezed her hand tenderly for comfort. "My bundle of joys and the pride of the House of Fenix was born." His given name at birth was Ruto Fenix, but he later changed it to Naruto, which was an ancient Japanese word, meaning maelstrom, after his trip to the human world with young Sirzechs Gremory and Ajuka Astaroth. He was a healthy and a beautiful baby, however, he was also an anomaly. At the exact same moment, with Naruto sat silently on his orange-colored plush couch. His mood had been odd ever since they teleported back to their Western-styled mansion in the mountainous area of New Zealand. If you miss them so much, then why don't you stay for a moment and greet them? His queen's question was still lingering on his mind. Pam had gone to do some spy work like collecting information or whatever spies are supposed to do, and had left him alone to think about his next move, or more importantly, to think about his family and friends that he had left behind all those years back. 2 centuries have passed almost unrecognizable. Time seemed to move fast when you have world safety as your main concern. He never once felt like missing his family that he'd left behind, neither his friends with whom he shared his childhood. Perhaps childhood is not the right word to use, more like his only happy memories at that time. However, when he saw his little sister, already grown into a beautiful young lady, it finally hit him, and believe me, it was a very, very hard hit. He came to understand how many years he had missed because of his disappearance. His frown became deeper the more he thought about it. By Rizivom's balls, he felt like an ass to them, but now that he knows about it, he is going to meet them, sooner than they think. Suddenly, a pair of slender arms with porcelain white skin circled around his neck, telling him that his queen was back from her work. He always wondered how was it that she able to get past his senses without alerting him. There was this one time, when he straight out asked her about it, and all she said was that, a lady has to have some secrets. He grumbled and told himself that this was all because of his teachings. How is it? He questioned. You're likely correct, my master. He was a really impatient fellow and planned to pit 3 factions against each other. Unfortunately, I don't know what he has been planning. Well, how about a clue of my finding? Enlighten me, my lady? There are 2 families of influential nature ruling over a certain area. By stealing some artifacts, he can wreak havoc between 2 opposite elements. Naruto's lone eye narrowed a bit. Don't tell me that he is going to steal something from the church and then try to kill Zeki's and Sarah's little sisters. Oh my, I think my clues are way too easy. Dom, I didn't think that the bastard will do something like that. The nerve of some people. He plans to exhaust the devil and the angel faction and then attack them, when both are already in a tired state. As stupid as the plan may sound, it might just actually work. Pam traced her lithe fingers on his chin and brushed his lower lip in a teasing manner. The amorous smell of her distinctive scent successfully calmed Naruto ever so slightly. So, what will you do? What will I do? Naruto frowned, deep in thought. There were many routes he could pick for greater good sake. Pam behind him sighed. She then grabbed his cheeks rather forcefully and turned him until he was face to face with her. Crimson eyes narrowed in annoyance when Naruto looked at her in bewilderment. I believe this is the time for you to give me my prize for my hard work, don't you think so, my lord? She said with a sickly sweet tone. Naruto gulped and nodded his head frantically. Damn, even in his second chance at life, he was still living around troublesome women. Her crimson eyes crinkled in an eye smile and her hypnotizing pink lips stretched into a predatory smile. Would you stop doing that whenever we are about to make love? Asked a nervous Naruto. Whatever do you mean, my master? She smiled innocently. The creepy smile. What creepy smile? That one you are wearing on your face right now. He pointed at her face. Oh my. Where is the fun in that, my master? Her smile impossibly stretched even further. And then she opened her eyes, which seemed to glow with hunger. Without warning she pounced on him and her thick legs encircled around his waist in some stunt that would make a world-class gymnast look like a newbie. Naruto yet again cursed his own teachings. Her sudden momentum forced an unaware Naruto to stumble behind until the back of his head slammed against the hard, unforgiving marble with loud thud, disorienting him slightly. When his mind came back to senses, he saw his queen sitting on his stomach with a flustered face. Without a single word, her hand grabbed his jumper. With a powerful rough tug, she ripped it completely with physical power that betrayed her slim hourglass physique. Damn woman, not my favorite clothes. Those were effing made by the Greek gods. Naruto complained with anime tears streaming down his cheeks. When he noticed that she didn't stop with his poor jumper, he continued. Wait, time out. Not my undershirt too, please. Unfortunately, his plea fell on deaf ears as the red-haired beauty ripped his black-colored undershirt with Konoha insignia embroidered on right pocket and Uzumaki clan crest on the opposite side. The young woman traced her cold middle finger on his chest very slowly, almost tortuous. She then licked her index finger in a perfect imitation of true sadism. Ah. Bon appetit, my master. Tilda. Naruto could only sigh in resignation as she grinded her pelvis on his slowly hardening member inside his pants. It was slow and agonizing to bear. He sometimes regretted his decision of reincarnating this woman as his queen, with his mutation piece all those years ago. This will be a very long night. Naruto thought miserably as he laid back on the floor while his queen decided that she was going to have her favorite meal. With the young devils. Every one of the young devils along with the adults were totally immersed in the story that was being told to them by Lady Fenix. They all laughed at the laughable moments and cried at the sad moments, which surprisingly were more than the happy ones in the Devil Prince's story. You know, every child is born crying or wailing. Relina stopped for a moment to gather her thoughts and then continued, he was born smiling, as if he knew where he was, knew what he was, and boy was he powerful. She looked at her hands, remembering the time when she held her baby boy for the first time, and oh, the happiness she felt. She remembered when doctors told her that her son was born with insane amount of magical reserves, and not only that, but he also had massive amount of chakra reserves within him too. At first the Fenix family were worried that it may pose a danger for his health, but soon realized that it wasn't the case. If I remember correctly, the nurses and a few doctors fainted when they noted his powers. Lady Cetree added while laughing a bit along with a few other adults. Meanwhile, the two Satans smiled at the talks. This was so like him. Bringing everyone together even when he was absent from the scene. Somewhere between the talks, Ruval along with Riser had also joined the group. They too were shocked to hear that they have a big brother who was literally the most powerful devil ever. Oh, but you still don't know about the origins of his twin swords, do you? Asked Venelena. Nope, no matter how many times we tried to find the truth, it was a lost cause. He himself didn't knew where they came from. Ronald answered with a chuckle. So, Oni-sama, how powerful was he? Rias asked the question that was bothering every young one. Yes, I too have been wondering the same, Oni-sama. Lord Lucifer said that you used to train with him, so you must know, right? Sona asked her sister. Suddenly both the Satans along with Graphia started shivering, while Lady Fenix smiled cutely at them. Though the young devils might not know, but the elder ones knew exactly what that smile meant. Please don't mention the word training again, mkaay. Sarafal said with a serious face while still trembling with fear, while Sirzechs and Graphia nodded their heads to show that they agreed with Sarafal. Everyone was now a bit afraid of this person if he can make the two Satans and an almost Satan-like being tremble without even being there. As for his powers, well, he can defeat all four of us only using his hand-to-hand combat, while we use all our powers and don't even ask about his sword skills. Damn those two swords of his. Sirzechs exclaimed with a straight face, causing the younger devil's jaws to drop. Okay, now they were officially terrified of the Prince of the Underworld. Defeat all four of them without even using his magical powers. Just what type of monster was he? Getting out her shock, Revel told her mother to continue, and Relina again started telling them about his adventures, obviously the ones she knew about. Then everything changed the day he met him. Relina continued and the room became deathly quiet. The younger ones looked at the adults, thinking what made them so serious all of a sudden. Who? Asked Ruval, looking towards her mother. Relina looked directly into her second oldest son's eyes and said the name she despised with her very being. Rizivom Lucifer. She spat venomously, causing everyone to go wide-eyed except for the ones who already knew about it. The adults, Sirzechs and Sarafal, remembered the first time they went to meet the son of the first Lucifer, as Relina narrated the story for the younger devils in the room. Flashback. 6-year-old Sirzechs, Ajuka, Falbium and Sarafal were waiting outside the Fenix mansion along with their parents, for the Fenix heir to come out, so that they could go to meet the Lord Lucifer, as he had called all the young heir and heiress to his mansion. Soon the Fenix family came out. Everyone saw Lord and Lady Fenix with their son Naruto. He was wearing his usual emotionless look and had his twin swords strapped on his back in a X formation. They have tried many times to ask him why he carried them, or who made them, etc. And every time he gave them the same answer, I don't know, underscore. After a few moments of walking, they all reached their destination. They took notice of other devils from various households standing around them. Some of them were quite recognizable, like the Agaras family, the Paimon family, etc., and others, not so much. Nodding to themselves, they made their inside. Sirzechs, Sarafal and Ajuka were excited to meet their Lord Lucifer, but Falbium and Naruto did not share the same feeling. One was too lazy and the other simply had a idgaf attitude. Reaching the main hall, the kids noticed 4 people sitting in a semi-circle-like formation on what seemed like throne seats. Naruto didn't care much about the other 3 as his eyes directly went towards the silver-haired devil from whom he could sense an immense amount of power radiating. He had never felt such an intimidating aura, not even his mother was this dangerous. Not only that, he could also sense a hell of a lot of negative emotions coming from the same person. Now being born with chakra and having empathic abilities helps one in sensing emotion, and this man. Daamn, he was pure evil, but he definitely caught Naruto's interest. Maybe he could ask this person to teach him or train him, Naruto thought to himself. The said person had an appearance of man who had just entered his 20s. He had shoulder-length silver hair and similar colored eyes. He was wearing what seemed like an armor of sorts, however, it wasn't what one would call a battle armor. It was more of a formal attire that was supposed to be worn on occasions like the council meetings, young devil gatherings, etc. This person was none other than the son of the first Lucifer, Rizivom Lucifer. Naruto was still not able to digest the bottomless creepy aura that was emitting from the man. Naruto was so lost in his thoughts regarding a certain silver-haired devil, that he didn't even notice that he was standing right in front of the said man. Naruto also realized that this man was giving of the same vibes as that Orochimaru, whatever the name of that man was in his dreams. Naruto could hear his mother calling him, but he decided to ignore her for the moment and gazed up to meet the eyes of the supposed leader of the devils. Rizivom Lucifer, the child of the first Lucifer, was definitely intrigued by the kid standing in front of him. At first he was surprised to see him casually walk towards him, cause normally, the devils would try to kiss his ass and whatnot to please him. However, this child, this particular devil, he was different, and he could sense that very clearly from his position. Looking straight into his eyes, Rizivom could tell that those were the eyes of a predator, or maybe something even better, a killer. This was exactly what he needed. Someone who can do all the dirty work for him. Someone who was not afraid of anything. Someone who can be turned into an all-killing machine. And so, he began his twisted work. Don't you think you are too young to carry such heavy swords, Rizivom asked Naruto, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. The question made everyone to stop whatever they were doing and focus towards the Lord Lucifer and a young boy with 2 big-ass sword on his back. Near the throne seats, a certain white-haired girl widened her usually closed, sleepy eyes, as she realized who the boy was. For a few seconds the hall was deathly quiet. Rizivom didn't say anything, and neither did Naruto. Then all of a sudden, Naruto's lips curled up in such a cruel smirk that it would have made a certain snake bastard piss his pants, and he replied, "Who knows?" The air around the hall became thick, making it hard for some to breathe. Behind Naruto, his parents, along with a few others who knew him, became worried. Now they wouldn't be so troubled if Rizivom had been a normal leader, but, from what they have heard, the son of the first Lucifer was a very cruel person, and add sadist to the list, who likes to see people writhing in pain. Was he into S&M, or was he, Naruto would think to himself many times. Not that there is anything wrong with that, of course, at least as long as it is consensual. Back with the 2 devils. Hearing the kid's answer, Rizivom's lip too curled into the same smirk that could have rivaled that of Naruto. He slowly stood up from his throne seat and started walking towards the young Fenix. Standing inches away from the youngling, Rizivom placed his hand on the hilt of one of his swords in order to take it out and inspect it. Naruto raised his eyebrow at the sudden move made by the Lucifer, but did nothing to stop him. The moment Rizivom took out the weapon from the kid's back, he felt his magical reserves being depleted at an alarming rate. Before he could understand or question anything, he fell down on his knees and started panting heavily. Sweat profusely dripping from his face, the sword now lying flat on the floor. His reserves almost empty. Many people that were present in the hall were stupefied with the unexpected turn of events, but one family knew exactly what has happened. Lord and Lady Fenix have experienced the very same thing firsthand. It takes almost infinite amount of magical reserves to even hold those particular swords, and their son used to do it all the time like he was not even trying. Seriously though, what the fish was wrong with their son? Naruto made his way towards the now downed leader of the devils. He picked up the sword from the ground with relative ease and bent down to be at an eye-to-eye level with the leader. Raising his sword, he pressed its tip to the throat of the huffing Lucifer. Before the guards of the palace could seize Naruto, Rizivom stopped them dead in their tracks by holding his hand up, telling them not to interfere whatsoever. Everyone could see that even though panting on the ground, Rizivom still had that cruel smirk plastered on his face. You know, he paused for a second before continuing. I could kill you right now. Leader Tilda, Naruto stated with a cold voice, increasing the pressure on his sword. Blood slowly trickling down Rizivom's neck, falling onto the ground beneath them. But that wouldn't be fun now, would it be, Tilda? He ended his talk with a sing-song voice, his personality taking a total 180-degree turn. He then took away his sword from Rizivom's throat and placed it back in its place. He stood up and offered his hand to the downed person whose breathing has returned to normal by now. Rizivom looked at the hand for a few seconds before accepting it without even a bit of shame. The two continued to hold each other hands a bit longer before Rizivom broke the silence. Rizivom Lucifer, he said with a voice befitting a leader. Naruto Fenix. Naruto replied with the same cold tone. With that said, Naruto started moving towards his family and friends. He could see the horrified look on other devils' face. That tends to happen when a 6-year-old points his sword towards the leader of their race. You sure are an interesting one, aren't you, Tilda? Rizivom spoke from his position, but Naruto kept walking towards his parents, not even glancing back to acknowledge his words. I am willing to train you, young Fenix. Rizivom continued as if he had read Naruto's thoughts earlier and smirked when he saw the young devil's steps coming to a halt. Naruto turned towards the silver-haired devil and said in a curious tone, all right, you got my attention. Start talking, Leader Tilda. I'm creating a team of devils who are powerful for their ages, whom we, the descendants of original Saiyans, are going to train personally, and you, my dear Naruto-kun Tilda, Rizivom said in a similar sing-song voice, that damned smirk still plastered on his face, are going to be the captain of that team. He finished, stunning everyone around, even his fellow Saiyans. Though they weren't official Saiyans per se, but given the fact that they were the direct descendants of the first Saiyans, they were being considered Saiyans for now. And if not Saiyans, then definitely leaders. I will be describing the other Saiyans later, sorry. Everyone's eyes traveled from their leader to the young heir of the House of Fenix, curious to find out what was going to happen next. Naruto had his head down, his silky golden bangs obscuring his face, making it seem like he was in deep thought. Then all of a sudden, he let out a burst of his power, his body glowing golden. The entire palace started shaking, scaring some of the children and their parents. Naruto snapped his neck upwards, his blue eyes glowing ominously with power, an almost bloodlusty grin on his face as he replied with a bone-chilling voice, done. With his little publicity stunt done, he took a few breaths to calm himself down and then turned to his mother and gave a small smile that was only reserved for a very few people in the whole damn world and said, I will be leaving now, mother, father and others. I've got a few things to take care of. And with that, he disappeared from his spot. No teleportation circle, no vanishing spell, no nothing. He simply left using pure speed, which was so freaking high for a 6-year-old that only a handful of the devils were able to notice it, leaving behind a clearly ecstatic leader of the underworld and a whole lot of terrified devils. While on his way home, Naruto thought to himself that whether he did the right thing in accepting the proposal or not. He just wished that his mother and father wouldn't be sad, that was the last thing he wanted. But then he thought about his brother, rival that used to appear in his dreams. Sasuke Uchiha was his name. He too left his home and followed a maniac like Rizivom, and man did he turn out powerful after his training with him. Naruto just hoped that Rizivom wouldn't give him a effing hickey on his neck like that Orochimaru guy. Nodding to himself, he thought that all he needed to do is keep himself mentally strong so that Rizivom wouldn't be able to influence him, cause these type of people tend to be slimy with words. And just like that, Naruto Fenix made his first impression on the underworld, especially on a certain snow-white-haired girl who was also present in the hall, standing near the throne seats without anyone being her guardian. A girl who would soon become a very important person in Naruto's life. Back to the present. From that day onwards, he was a changed person. He rarely came back home. We didn't know what type of training he got there. He never told us about it, always telling us not to worry. And then, he started going on missions. Missions that involved killing, a lot of it, and he completed each and every one of them with his team. As time went on, he became more distant, cold and more emotionless towards everyone. He wasn't the same anymore. Relena said with a grim voice. Tears threatened to fall from her eyes as she regretted the moment he took her precious son to that monster's place. Ronald hugged her wife close, cursing himself for going to the Lucifer's mansion that day. If they hadn't gone there that day, their eldest son would have been here with them today. The younger devils were stunned, none more than the Fenix siblings. They thought that they will be hearing how he was a great hero and all, but this was totally unexpected. Seeing the distraught look on his wife's face, Lord Fenix decided to continue on her stead. He left the underworld on the day the civil war ended. You should have seen that final battle though. It was him versus all, and it was AWEEESOME. He said with pride and amazement clear in his voice. Relena chuckling a bit through her tears. Doesn't that means that he ended the war all by himself? But the books said that the 5 heroes stood together and defeated the old Satan faction? Sona mused out loudly. Like we said before dear, the books had to be changed to keep his identity a secret. Venelana told the heiress of the Sea Tree House. And so Tan Tilda, he literally ended it all by himself. We would have lost, if he hadn't interfered at that moment. Sarafal told her sister, a bit serious than her usual jovial mood. While it is true that we 5 fought in the war together, but it was him who ended it. Had it not been for him, the war would have dragged on for a few years more, probably. He appeared when we had no hope of winning and turned the tables in an instant. He wasn't exactly an active participant in the war, but never mind that. You know what he did. He alone took down an army of 8,000 devils ranging from ultimate class to low Satan class. Then proceeded to beat the shit out of the descendants of the original Satans. All that in an hour, give or take. Now that's what I call a legitimate badass. Sirzechs added with stars in his eyes as he remembered the best fight he had seen in his life. Well, not really a fight, more like an one-sided massacre. The younger devils could only gape like a fish as no voice came out of their mouth. Sure, they knew that Sirzechs and Sarafal were powerful, but this guy took it to a whole nother level. All the while the Fenix siblings could only awe at how badass, in the words of Sirzechs, their eldest brother was. And to think that they share the same blood as the strongest devil and yet they were nothing more than commoners in the underworld. It was kind of shameful, they thought to themselves as their head hung low. The adults could only chuckle when they saw the reactions of the younger generation. They themselves had the same look when they saw the fight between Naruto and the old Satan faction. Grafia pinched Sirzechs' cheeks, causing him to whimper. Please refrain yourself from using such language in front of the young devils, Sirzechs-sama. She stated with a cold voice. But you yourself said that it was badass. Whined Sirzechs as he massaged his swollen cheek. Oni-sama used to do things in a way that made them look badass. Grafia replied with a sad smile, remembering her brother figure who taught her many things and made her realize that she should listen to her heart more often, which in turn led her to joining the anti-Satan faction. Oni-sama? Almost every young one shouted at Grafia. That's right kiddos, Grafia here considered him a big brother and looked up to him, always trying to earn his praise. Lord Gremory told the Chibis as Grafia nodded with a straight face, though a tinge of red appeared on her cheeks due to embarrassment. I'm pretty sure that Ajuka Tan Tilda has that video of Naruto Tan Tilda fighting. Sarafal quipped with a big smile on her face. Ahahahahaha, Naruto himself told Ajuka to make the video, didn't he? Asked Lord Seatree as the other adults laughed, remembering the scene. It was seriously wicked. Lady Biel and Cyrorg Biel had too joined in sometime earlier when they saw all the adults of famous household together. Cyrorg was clearly excited to meet this guy who could defeat the 4 Satans with his bare hands. That's exactly what he was looking for. Anyo mama, papa, Revel said timidly as everyone looked towards her. Yes dear, Relena replied. Do you have Big Brother's photos or something? I want to see him," she said, while fidgeting with her fingers. The couple smiled at their daughter. Lady Fenix snapped her fingers and an album appeared on her lap. It was small in size and had a chibi Naruto as the cover page. This album was something that she always kept with herself, no matter where she went. It was something she held very dear to herself. Everyone scooted closer to Lady Fenix to take a look at the Prince of the Underworld. Lady Fenix opened the album and the very first photo was of Lady Fenix in the maternity ward as she held the newly born baby Naruto close to herself with a few Fenix family members standing around her. Next photo showed a 2-year-old Naruto wearing a fox outfit with ears and tails. Every girl present there let out a squeal and the males in the room cringed at their high voice. "Oh, he's so cute, Tilda," Lady Cetree crooned and the other ladies nodded in agreement. As the photos went by, almost everyone could feel the changes in the persona of the Devil Prince. His eyes grew colder and colder by each passing page. They became so cold that even Graphia had to suppress a shiver. But that didn't change the fact that he was impossibly handsome that made the girls blush hard while the males grumbled something about damned Casanovas. The album ended with a picture of a 17-year-old Naruto with a girl who had her arms wrapped around his neck as she kissed him on the cheek while he held her close and 2 other people who stood around them. All of them giving a victory sign towards the camera. One could see that even though he was still wearing an emotionless mask, a small smile and a faint blush was evident on his face. The girl that was kissing Naruto in the picture had snow-white hair that reached past her hips and was insanely beautiful. Her face and figure were so damn fine that one could say that she made Gabriel look like an everyday woman. The males present tried their best to suppress the blush that was slowly forming on their cheeks and the females could only pout at the looks of the girl in the photo. However, there was something strange about that photo. The adults in the room, excluding Relina, felt an odd sense of familiarity as they stared at the photo. It was as if they knew who the girl was but try as they might, nothing came to their mind. Relina gazed at the elders in the room, her mouth slowly turning into a sad smile. She knew exactly what was going on with them but she remained silent. Shaking her head, she closed the album and the room fell quiet. Revel was about to ask some questions regarding the girl in the photo but stopped midway when she saw small water droplets falling on top of the album. She looked up and was shocked to see her mother crying. In the 16 years of being alive, Revel had never seen her strong and happy-go-lucky mother cry like this, and the same can be said about the other Fenix siblings and their peerages. This was probably the first time that they ever seen the lady of the House of Fenix crying. Putting those thoughts in the back of their minds, they quickly made way towards their mother and gave her a comforting hug. "If only he was here with us, with me," she whispered the last part to herself. "You all would have loved him. He was great with kids. Not to mention his cooking," sobs. And boy do I miss him." She let her tears fall freely this time as her thumb ran over the chibi Naruto lovingly. It was a bit weird that even though she was crying, there was a small smile present on her face. Relina herself wondered why she was crying all of a sudden. Why now of all times? Was it the memories that were triggered due to the album, or was it the fact that it had been 200 years since she last saw her son? She knew very well that he was alive, but still. A mother has the right to worry, no? Worried because she knew that problems followed her son like a ghost. And her son, being the idiot he is, instead of being afraid of them or instead of running away from them, challenged them head on. The adults could only look at her solemnly while praying to the great Mao for the return of the eldest Fenix sibling. They too knew that he was alive out there, somewhere. He was too much of a bastard to die anyway. The mothers present in the room could understand how the matriarch of the Fenix household was feeling. Before the atmosphere could dampen even more, the lone window in the room unbolted and a strong breeze blew past everyone, making them shiver. Everyone's eyes widened to an almost unbelievable level when they all heard a smooth yet a mature voice that said, "Please don't cry, mother, tears really don't suit you." Their eyes snapped towards the now open window and they could have sworn that they saw a silhouette of a person standing with his back towards them, with 2 big-ass swords strapped on his back as it slowly faded into the black of the night. They all looked back at Lady Fenix, who touched her cheeks to find all her tears gone. She gave a goofy grin, almost similar to the ones Naruto had in his younger years in the photos. "Dear, was that?" Before Lord Fenix could complete the question, Lady Fenix replied, Yup, it means that. Lord Fenix was again interrupted. Yup, she replied as she started to laugh hysterically, surprising everyone, well, mainly the younger ones. Dom, that dramatic child of mine, continued Lady Fenix while laughing like crazy. The adults themselves looked on the verge of tears after hearing the voice of the person they hadn't heard for about 2 centuries. After a few seconds, all the adults, meaning Lord and Lady Gremory, Sirzechs, Graphia, Lord and Lady Cetri, Sarafal, Lady Biel, and lastly Lord and Lady Fenix, comically yelled together, scaring the younger ones in the room. He's coming, home. In the master bedroom of his house, Naruto suddenly rose up from his bed all covered in sweat, panting heavily. He realized that his hands had unconsciously grabbed his swords. His eye immediately went towards the beautiful black bracelet hanging on the wrist of his right hand. It glowed purple for a few seconds before it disappeared from its place as if it wasn't there from the very beginning. These never-ending nightmares, man, they sucked. Naruto shook his head to clear his mind and got out of the bed to do his daily chores. Pam had left yet again to gather information about the potential attack that was about to happen. Most probably in a few days, he hoped so, because it's been quite some time since he had fought someone. He quickly made his way towards the bathroom, freshened himself up and entered the kitchen to make some breakfast, knowing that Pam will be back from her mission anytime soon. Naruto felt someone appearing on his roof. He did not need to look to know who the new arrival was, as he was already waiting for him so far. Making sure that the food was done, he made his way towards the roof of his house. "You seem to be enjoying your time," Naruto said, entering the roof. His voice was soft, but it was clear enough to be heard by the person in front of him. "Of course," came the laid-back reply. In front of Naruto was a black-haired man with ridiculous blonde bangs. 6 pairs of angel-like wings, darker than the sky at night, protruding out of his back. Yes, the one standing in front of him was a fallen angel. Not just any fallen angel, it was the leader of their faction. His appearance was not as attractive as the other supernatural beings whom Naruto had known so far. He did not have that unearthly attractiveness and beauty that most of the supernatural beings possessed. In fact, his appearance can be considered very plain and normal as a handsome and a dandy male human that was in his mid-30s. Looking further, one could notice that his stance was slouched, but Naruto could easily see past that mask. Behind the laid-back attitude was hidden scary ruthlessness, forged from betrayals and thousands of years of experiences. After all, his own beloved father had forsaken him and turned him into a scapegoat, a millennia ago. He was the Archangel of Doom and the leader of the fallen angel faction, Azazel. "Azazel," Naruto said, his voice void of any emotion that made the now-named Azazel to straighten up immediately. Azazel knew exactly who this guy was, and he also knew what he was capable of. After all, he had been working for him as his agent Fox for many years. Azazel definitely didn't want to remember their first meeting, in which the said blonde had almost killed him just because he had tried to flirt with a particular girl of his team. But after looking at that girl, Azazel thought that the beating was worth it. Now, the very same Fenix was Azazel's best spy. What were the odds of that happening? Naruto had made Azazel swear on his title as the leader of the fallen angels that he will not tell anyone who he was or what his real identity was. Azazel agreed, knowing that it wasn't his place to do so anyway. If the person wanted to keep his identity a secret, then so be it. "Naruto, you know that when we are alone you don't have to be so formal." Azazel tried to reduce the tension in the air. "Of course, why not? You useless pervert," Naruto said nonchalantly. Azazel gained a tick mark on his forehead when he heard the nickname that his favorite spy has given him all those years ago. He wasn't useless, damn it, well, at least according to himself. "I'm not useless," shouted the leader of fallen angels. "Sure you're not," Naruto replied in such a tone that it pissed off Azazel even more. Now he was regretting the fact that he let Naruto drop his business mode. "From how urgent your call was, I bet this is a very important matter." "Yes, it is about one of your subordinate." "What about my subordinate? No one had pissed you off, right? They must have a death wish if they do that." Naruto frowned when he heard Azazel. "What do you think I am? A homicidal maniac?" he questioned as his frown deepened. "Who knows, maybe you're not." Azazel replied with a rough-ish grin. "Let's get back to our discussion and stop changing the subject, you useless pervert." Act like a responsible adult for once. Naruto said in a bored tone. Where is the fun in that? Azazel pouted in mock sadness. When he saw Naruto's lone eye, behind the mask, narrowing dangerously, he raised his hands in a surrendering manner. Okay. Geez, kids these days don't have a sense of humor at all. So, who is it? Kokabiel. Before Naruto could finish his explanation, Azazel interrupted him with a loud face palm. What has that idiot done this time? Azazel sounded sour and annoyed. Well, Naruto began, he had stolen 3 Excalibur fragments. He did what? And has made plans to assassinate Sirzechs and Sarafal's little sister. Fuck, Azazel summed up colorfully. Naruto watched as Azazel rubbed his forehead. The fallen angel governor was clearly frustrated. I was going to ask you if you have any idea who else was in it, but, after looking at your reaction, the answer is obviously no. Naruto replied. He should have known about these things himself, but for the last few years he had stopped going to Grigori and had made very few visits. So, he wasn't sure if Kokabiel was alone in this or not. Damn right. I am tired of war and senseless death. It is all I have known for most of my life. I am content with this current peaceful life, Naruto. No way in burning hell will I ever spike another war knowing that Grigori is still the lowest of 3 factions in terms of population. Naruto grinned behind his mask when he heard that. Yeah, your faction is the lowest in number, but it is more advanced than the devil and angel factions, you useless pervert. Flattery will get you nowhere, brat. Azazel smiled ruefully. It is the truth though. I, myself am responsible to a certain degree for your faction being so high-tech. But, devil faction has Ajuka. Honestly, that brat's mind is scary, but of course no one comes near your level. Maybe except your so-called master, teased Azazel. Well, Ajuka has lost his drive to create anything, let alone something that can provoke another war. Though creation of evil pieces could have led to another war, but it didn't. Now, he is just creating some games for amusement. Well, there were a few interesting games that I appreciated, but I think I need to have a good talk with him regarding the distribution of the evil pieces. Naruto replied, while completely ignoring the master part. You do realize that the others will feel threatened by it, don't you, Naruto? Honestly, something that can reincarnate humans and other races as devil, who wouldn't feel threatened? His initial reason behind creating the pieces was to have some fun. Bolstering devil population was just a bonus for him and us. Says the faction with largest population in the world. Hate tilde, don't be a sore loser, you useless pervert. Damn brat, stop calling me that. Both of them were silent after that, gazing at the starry sky, with gentle breeze caressing their hair as the moonbeam shone above them, illuminating the magnificent view of the modern city of New Zealand. After enjoying the comfortable silence for a few more minutes, Naruto decided to continue their conversation. What will you do about your brother? Azazel did not answer him instantly. The leader of the fallen rubbed his unshaved chin and put on a pensive face. His eyebrows furrowed in deep thought. I think, Azazel spoke, after contemplating about it for a long time. I'll let him to do what he wants, until he tries to kill the Satan's sisters. That's when I will jump in and kill Kokabiel. It will spike another war if those 2 girls were to die. Naruto held his urge to sigh after hearing that. After a few seconds, Naruto decided to ask the question that has been lingering on his mind for a while. Are you really going to use him as a scapegoat? I mean, he is your brother, right? Naruto watched with fascination as Azazel's face shifted into a bitter expression. Sometimes, a single sacrifice is needed for the sake of thousands, Naruto. The Archangel of Doom spoke with a melancholy tone. Naruto was also spotting a similar expression beneath his mask. He knew exactly how Azazel felt right now. It was a hard choice, but as the leader, he could not do anything else. Real life was not a fairy tale. It was hard and unforgiving. He could only swallow and accept it. It was bitter. It was sad. However, for the betterment of the future, it was crucial and needed. What exactly are you planning? Naruto asked curiously. He knew Azazel isn't the type to just kill his own subordinate, a cadre in that regards, just like that. He was known to possess a very advanced and a strategic mind, with Falbium Asmodeus coming second after him. Tilda, now, where is the fun in that, nay? Azazel's face turned back to the goofy mask he usually wore. Naruto's eyebrow twitched. He neared Azazel menacingly with a tick mark on his head. Golden aura blazed around him and the temperature rose in a blink of an eye. Lone eye that can be seen through the mask started glowing ominously. The cold night around them immediately turned as hot as a midday. Not just any midday of the freaking Sahara Desert. Wait, time out. I was just joking. I will tell you. Stop harassing me, Naruto. Azazel's nervous shout echoed. Naruto did not care and kept walking forward. It was only thanks to the barrier that Naruto had put around his house that the sudden spike in energy went unnoticed. Otherwise he was sure that every supernatural being within a few miles around them would have felt his power. The barrier itself was special. It was created with pure natural energy and only skilled senjutsu users like Sun Wukong or God-class beings will ever be able to sense it. Others, such as the Nekosho in Gremory's peerage would not be able to feel it, as her senses would only tell her it was merely natural energy in the air. Not like she was in New Zealand anyway. After Naruto had enough of knocking some sense into the irresponsible leader, he let down the barrier but not before compressing his energy to a bare minimum. One could see the comical sight of Azazel lying flat on his stomach, whimpering and rubbing the bumps on his head. Next to the governor of Grigori, Naruto stood with a satisfied expression on his face, not that Azazel could see it. Sometimes, it felt really good to have the leader of a faction as a punching bag. Damn, don't you have respect for your elders? Azazel grumbled amid his pain. Respect is earned, Azazel, not served on a silver platter. Only fools respect others without good reason. Che, smart ass. Naruto stared down at Azazel who was still sitting on the floor. Now, tell me. After giving a long-suffering sigh, Azazel caved in. I wanted to use this chance to create an alliance between the three factions. Naruto blinked as the gears inside his head stopped working. What did the crazy old man just say? After a few seconds, he mumbled dumbly. Huh? What? Is it that hard for you to understand? Azazel asked in bewilderment. Naruto, who felt like he was being toyed with, could not help but feel annoyed. He cracked his knuckles menacingly and it instantly brought Azazel's teasing to an end. Okay, I will stop. Just don't be violent. I can't take it any more than this. Azazel grumbled. He took a deep breath and then explained. I am tired of this continuous fighting, Naruto. A fight that has no end. A fight that has no reason either. And it has caused so much death and so much pain, not just for one faction. I don't want the younger generation to suffer the same fate as us. I want them to be free and this alliance is my only option. Did you practice that speech? Asked a slightly impressed Naruto. Obviously, how did I do? Naruto did a gesture with his hand. Kinda like flip-flopping. That meant that the speech was so-so. Azazel gave a pout but decided to ask about Naruto's opinion regarding his offer. So, what do you think? You do realize that it is not going to be easy for you, you useless pervert. EsssCeee or Blondie-kun won't believe it in face value. As a matter of fact, no one is going to believe it, because it's you. Biwa ha 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 ha. Azazel laughed boisterously when he heard Naruto's chosen nickname for the Crimson Satan and the Prince of Heaven. EsssCeee? Blondie-kun? Now, you're the most disrespectful brat I have ever met in my whole immortal life. I understands you were pals with Serafall Lucifer, but to call Michael like that, bawahahahaha. Naruto looked at Azazel with a raised eyebrow. Well, I really don't like formalities at all. I can call whoever I want, whatever I want. Only you, Naruto, only you. Bawahahahahahahaha. Azazel slapped his knee as he kept laughing madly. Naruto sighed in exasperation and waited for the fallen angel to stop. He can't really tell Azazel that Grigori wasn't the only faction he was working with, but meh, Azazel would know soon enough. When Azazel finally stopping 5 minutes later, Naruto continued their paused conversation. Will you bring up their existence in the meeting too? Azazel immediately understood what Naruto meant. He nodded firmly. You know, putting 3 factions leader in the same place will make for a very good lure for them. Naruto continued, baiting Azazel's reaction. The fallen angel leader smirked challengingly. He then replied to the blonde devil. Well, it is another point I have in my mind. To be honest, if they are really going to attack, it will be a good enough proof for the importance of our alliance. Naruto couldn't help but whistle appreciatively. Dom, very shrewd. Why, thank you. Azazel replied in a sarcastic tone. That wasn't exactly a compliment. It seemed like one to me. Naruto sat on the floor next to Azazel and they came to another comfortable silence. Azazel smiling at their casual banter. It had taken him decades to get a single word out of the Fenix's mouth. Their early meetings used to end in 2 minutes flat. His agent Fox would come, hand him the necessary information and leave. That's it. Times sure have changed since then and it was a happy change. He had worked really hard to earn the blonde's trust. This conversation was a proof of it. By the way, how is Valley? Naruto suddenly asked. Azazel shrugged. Still a disrespectful brat like you. No, scratch that, he's even worse. The only thing he seems to care for is fighting and becoming strong. He has got the Lucifer blood in him, you know. Sometimes, it is hard to control the urge. Well, at least he has a good relationship with the vanishing dragon. Whatever you taught him, created a good foundation for him. I'm confident to say that he is the strongest Hikuryuko to ever live. Naruto's eyebrow rose in amusement. The kid finally showed his fangs, huh? Yeah, and sharpest one in that. Naruto suddenly got up from his position and glanced at Azazel. Well, I really want to see the growth of the white hatchling. Last one was said to be the strongest and all it took was 8 seconds to, well you know what. And I believe that you are going to send him to retrieve Kokabiel, right? How did you figure that out? Azazel questioned with a raised eyebrow. Call it a hunch. Naruto shrugged. By the way, how is the curse coming along? Asked Naruto, with a small smirk behind the mask. You don't get to ask, damn it. Azazel yelled at Naruto. I had many harems before, and now, I'm bound to a single woman. Do you know what happens when you have to suddenly change your whole damn lifestyle? Azazel continued, with crocodile tears rolling down his cheeks. Naruto's smirk widened even more behind the mask. The particular female with whom Azazel had tried to flirt, had placed a curse on him. A curse due to which, he was now bound to a single woman for eternity. Not saying that I don't love her or anything but still. Azazel whined as he punched the floor beneath him. The woman with whom he was now mated, bound whatever you want to call it, was a human once. Azazel after some time had told her the truth about his real identity as a fallen angel, but that didn't stop that woman from loving him. She was now a resurrected fallen angel with 4 pair of wings. Her name was Josephine Hall. Quite an interesting one, that woman. It was your own fault, you useless pervert. This is what happens when you bite off more than you can chew. Especially when you don't even know what you are biting. Naruto replied, as his lone eye turned soft behind the mask. All this talk made him remember his times with his team. Ah, those were the days. None of the persons spoke for a few minutes, calmly enjoying the silence. Putting aside the past and all, what are you going to do now? Azazel questioned. He wondered whether Naruto will himself intervene and take care of things. The Fenix Prince was a big softy when it came to children and the younger generation, just like him. And not just that, the man was good with kids as well. Strange, I guess, it's time for a comeback tilde. Naruto replied with a mad smirk behind his mask, his form glinting gold. Azazel quickly moved a few meters back, knowing full well what was going to happen. He was pretty sure that by the time Valley will arrive at the scene, Kokabiel would be history. With that said, Naruto went back inside his house where Pam was already waiting for him. So finally it's time, I see. Azazel smirked as he commented on Naruto's reply. I'm going to need your help, Naruto, if I want to guarantee world peace. World peace? Damn, that sounded so awesome. Now while the idea was indeed awesome, Azazel was well aware of the fact that it wasn't an easy task. As a matter of fact, it was the most difficult task, and if anyone was capable of completing it, it was Naruto Fenix. Azazel promised himself that he was going to provide as much help as he can to make sure that the Fenix succeeds. After contemplating for a few more minutes, Azazel went back to watching the beautiful scenery in front of him and marveled at the beauty of the world. Inside the house, Pam slowly ate the devilishly tasty food that was being served to her by her master. It was quite amusing, given the fact that she was the servant and it was the master who was serving her, quite the irony. It wasn't like she can't cook food or anything, it was just that she sucked at cooking. Every time she tried to cook for her beloved master, she would either blow up the kitchen or burn the whole house down. How the hell did she manage to do that? Naruto still had no idea. So, what have you got? Naruto asked, as he took a bite of his food. Can I at least finish the delicious food, master? Pam whined with a pout on her face. You do realize that the life of 2 heiresses is in danger, right? Which means that they could probably die in the little skirmish, replied Naruto. You were not going to let that happen anyway. Pam mumbled to no one in particular. She then straightened herself up and cleared her throat, her tone changing from her usual playful one to a mature and serious one. It was her official business tone that she had learned from her master after living 50 years with him. I succeeded in hacking the church's databank and gained the information on the exorcists who are going to Japan to retrieve the stolen holy swords. Naruto's eye narrowed as he concentrated. This was time for being serious. Getting a nod from her master, she continued, from what I could gather, the church has decided to send 2 young exorcists. One of them is a natural-born holy sword wielder and the current wielder of Durandal, while the other one is non-natural and has been trained to be an exorcist. As of now, both girls' exorcists are currently on their way to Japan. Here is their biodata, she said, in a magic circle with House of Fenix crest appeared on the table. From the magic circle, a stack of paper popped out, and Naruto started reading them. Zenobia. Quarta, is she related to Griselda by any chance? Naruto murmured as he read the name of the exorcist whose biodata he was holding. Griselda Quarta was a nun and one of the best exorcists of the heaven, as she liked to call herself. Did a few missions with her here and there. As to how he met her, well, that is a story for another time. Maybe she adopted her, or a relative perhaps. She hasn't married, so obviously this Zenobia person isn't her daughter. Pam gave her input and Naruto nodded. And the other person, Irina Shido, Naruto thought out loud. Now he needed to talk to Gabriel about sending 2 kids to retrieve the fragments of Excalibur and fight a Cadre-level fallen angel. Did they want them dead or something? So, what do you think? Naruto asked his queen to hear her thoughts about it. To be honest, I can't help but think that the church is sending these 2 girls to their death. However, the better question is, what are you going to do now, master? Pam gave her answer, all the while voicing the question that had been on her mind lately. Naruto sighed. This was the second time he was being asked the same question in a span of 10 minutes. Just like I told Azazel, it's time to show our faces to the world. Muahaha ha 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 tilde. Naruto laughed like crazy, a habit he had picked from his master, before he was hit by her queen on the back of his head. She might be his servant, but that didn't stop her from keeping her master in line. But seriously though, is it time already? Asked Pam one last time, just to confirm her doubt. Of course, dear. And finally I can meet my family, and so can you. He told her with a sad smile on his face. He shook his head again to get rid of his depression, because it was time to fight. Hell yeah. Pam smiled, seeing her master as he showed a rare smile on his face that wasn't being forced. What she didn't mention was that she too was excited to officially meet the 4 great Satans, archangels, and her master's family. A week later. Well, ain't that something? Naruto spoke to himself as he sat on the top of a nearby building, all the while looking down towards the crimson-haired 18-year-old girl who was currently taking part in a little skirmish in front of the Kuo Academy. She was a pretty little thing with the familiar crimson-colored hair and blue-green eyes that he recognized all too well. If it was not for the crimson color of the hair, then he would have mistaken her for Venelena Gremory, but he knew exactly who the little girl was. She was Rias Gremory, the heir of the Gremory household, the younger sister of the Crimson Satan, the Crimson Ruin Princess, yada yada yada. He watched her fight the 10-winged fallen angel with her peerage by her side, and to his surprise 2 followers of the church, with one wielding a holy sword, Mimic, and the other wielding the Durandal, were also there. Amazingly enough, they were fighting alongside the Gremory peerage and not against them. Quite an interesting development. I don't understand, why do they give such swords to kids who don't even know how to use it to its full potential? He again whispered to himself. Scanning the academy for other signatures, he was able to sense another group of devils. From what he could tell, they were trying to uphold the barrier that was created to protect the surrounding areas. The devil energy signature felt strongly like that of the sea trees. He immediately knew it was Sona's sea tree and her peerage. He stayed put in his place and continued watching the fight that was going on in front of him. Not before, he blinked rapidly when the Gremory girl was blasted back via Kokabiel's attack, only for the Red Dragon Emperor to catch her. They won't last long against Kokabiel. he thought as he had his arms crossed against his chest. They are nowhere near that kind of level. Now that I think about it, why aren't their older brother, sister popping up? Isn't it about time? Either both of them have gone senile over the years or they have a bit too much faith in their siblings. I'm actually a little disappointed, alright, very disappointed. I thought that the little sister of that red-haired goof would be better than this, and of course not to mention the Red Dragon Emperor. How did he win against my idiot brother again? Oh right, cheats. Naruto sighed and kept on rambling to himself. I guess I got my hopes up for nothing. He cracked his fingers in anticipation of the upcoming fight, before his focus went towards the Red Dragon Emperor that stood protectively in front of his king. I better stop these kids from getting killed. Bunch of whipper-snappers trying to take down a cadre-level fallen angel who is also a supposed warmonger. Che, damn rookies. But you know what, I think that I'm going to have some real fun, tilde. He smirked to himself, thinking about different ways to humiliate the 10-winged bastard before Valley arrives and disrupts the party. He had told Pam to look for a lost artifact in the meantime. She didn't like fighting weak people, and it was better that way. She had a tendency of taking things a bit too far when fighting a weak opponent who thinks of herself as the top dog. Not that he cared about the fallen bastard, but doing that in front of the kids can be quite traumatizing for them. And with that, he disappeared from the rooftop. Outside KUOH Academy. EsssCeee. Rias Gremory shouted as she slid along the floor and caught her pawn Issei Hyodo before he could hit the ground, cradling his head in her lap while he tried to catch his breath. President. He winced out. Rias cupped his face, trying to shush him. Don't talk right now. Concentrate on gathering your energy. She chided. Making sure that her pawn was alright, she glanced around the battlefield. All her peerage members were currently down and out for the count. Her knight, Kiba Yuto, bishop, Asia and rook, Kaneko Tujo were already unconscious, and her wounded queen, Akeno Himejima, was standing defensively in front of them. To her right, the church follower Irina was laying flat on the ground while Zenobia was on her last legs. She was using the Durandal to keep herself upright. Looking behind her, she gazed in the direction of Sona and her peerage and could see that they would not be able to keep the barrier up for much longer. Stay behind me, President. She heard her pawn speak. Issei stood up shakily, the gem on his boosted gear glowing bright green. No, Eyes, you're not strong enough, she said, grabbing his arm tightly. You'll die if you continue to fight in such a state. In front of her, the fallen angel Kokabiel was laughing like a madman as he began listing reasons why he would not fail and how he would make their deaths as painful as possible. Stay with me, Eyes, stay with me. Rias whispered to her pawn as she held her arms around Issei protectively, daring the fallen angel to make a move. Time to die, Gremory. Kokabiel called out. Several light weapons began appearing behind him. All Rias could do was gulp and grip Issei even more tighter. It was times like this that she wished she was not so weak. Why couldn't she be more like her brother and sister-in-law? I think that's enough, Kokabiel-chan tilde. A rather childish voice was heard by everyone in the vicinity. A small knife-like thing whizzed past the young ones with tremendous speed and embedded itself into the shoulder of Kokabiel, making him shriek in pain. Who dares? Kokabiel roared, looking around frantically for the person who had the nerve to hit him. Idaared, Elf-kun tilde. Naruto said in his usual sing-song voice. Kokabiel narrowed his eyes to see who it was, and the moment his eyes met the lone draconic eye of the intruder, he knew it was his last day. You are Agent Fox, aren't you? Kokabiel said as he started taking steps back, scared of the person that had landed in front of him. He knew about Agent Fox, the best spy ever, the cruel guardian of the fallen angels, etc., etc. This guy was responsible for the death of a lot of rogue and nasty fallen angels who either tried going against Azazel or did something that made Naruto mad. Up till now, Kokabiel had done his best to keep himself out of his shit list, but now, well. Correct you are, Elf-kun. Now why don't you straighten yourself up so that we can have a good fight tilde? Naruto said. Fool, who do you think you're talking to? I'm a cadre-level fallen angel. I participated in the Great War. You are nothing compared to me. Kokabiel shouted, trying to show that he wasn't scared of him at all. Naruto simply rose his eyebrow a bit before snapping his fingers. The said action caused a firewall to be erected between himself and the kids behind him. It was just to make sure that the kids remain safe while they fight. He also decided to use normal fire for now, because using his original one would be a dead giveaway. With that done, he turned towards the now enraged fallen angel and said, "Now then, shall we?" Naruto made a "come and get me" gesture with his free hand, while the other one remained inside his pocket. Feeling mocked, Kokabiel snarled as he rushed towards him in order to start a hand-to-hand combat. Now going against Naruto in hand-to-hand combat of all things was what many would consider as plain death, or suicide. However, this fool wasn't exactly very well informed. So, just like everyone, Kokabiel started with an obvious kick to the temple, to which Naruto merely ducked, making the kick look like a total waste. Not wasting any time, Kokabiel tried to go for his legs by sweeping to make him lose his footing. However, Naruto simply stepped backwards. He then followed up with a left jab, making Naruto tilt his head to the other side. The same routine went on for a good 5 minutes. Each time Kokabiel would try a new attack, Naruto would easily dodge it or outmaneuver it. Kokabiel was starting to get annoyed by each passing second, and it was showing in his movements. He had tried every single combo that he had learned over the 1,000 years of his life, and yet, none of the attacks seemed to connect. So, either he was doing it wrong or the person in front of him was way too fast and agile. All the while Naruto could only look at the fallen angel with a bored eye. And he wanted to start a war, really? Naruto thought inside his mind as he kept on dodging the attacks. Naruto closed his lone eye and sighed. He thought that this was going to be fun and all, but it turned out rather dull. Sensing a sudden spike in his opponent's power, he opened his eye halfway, only to find a smirking Kokabiel floating in the air with a whole lot of elephant-sized light spears sailing towards him. Before Naruto could move or react, the spears poured down on him. A large blast rang throughout the school and the ground shook because of the impact. The barrier made by Sona's sea tree and her peerage shattered into a million fragments. Rias and Akano, along with the now awake church members, could only wonder what was happening on the other side of the firewall. Not wanting to waste any time, they started healing the injured, all the while thinking about the person that had intervened to save their lives. Back to the fight. "You see this, boy? This is what happens when you mess with someone who is above you, you ignorant fool." Kokabiel yelled, a triumphant smirk on his face, thinking that he had won the fight. His eyes stained at the smoke and the floating debris. "Now then, it's time to take down the—" Words died in his mouth when the smoke suddenly dissipated and the supposed dead person was seen standing in between a perfect circle made by the light spears, tut-tutting and shaking his head in a negative motion. This time both his hands were inside his pockets. "What the foo?" thought a terrified Kokabiel. He was very much sure that his attacks had made connection with the blonde in front of him, so why was he standing there as if nothing had happened? Why was he in perfect condition? The attack should have done at least some damage, right? Before he could voice his questions, he was brought down from the sky to the ground when he felt a tremendous amount of energy leaking from the blonde in front of him. This energy felt so dark, so vile, just like a devil's. Kokabiel's eyes widened to impossible levels as realization dawned upon him. Naruto, after taking the stupid attack head on, which he had obviously dodged, rather neatly I might add, had decided to finish this so-called fight. He released about 5% of his energy, which was enough to bring the Cadre-level fallen angel down on his knees. The fallen angel wasn't the only one who was affected by the sudden burst of energy. The others present within the premises also dropped to the ground due to the unbearable pressure. It was as if the atmosphere itself was trying to suffocate them, trying to tell them how weak and helpless they were in front of such a force. Kokabiel, though, had began to sweat, barely able to stand due to the pressure. Rias and Akano, who were laying flat on the ground, swallowed the lump in their throat as they felt the power emitting from the area where the fight was going on. It made their power look so tiny in comparison. The only other person who Rias could think of having a power like this was her brother. No, even her brother's power weren't this dark. While they were not able to watch the fight directly, they could tell that this power didn't belong to Kokabiel. It was way too dark to be a fallen angel's. This power felt just like a devil's. That was like super ultra mega boring tilde. Kokabiel heard the devil speak. He tried his best to stand back up, but his legs felt like jelly. All he could do now was shake in fear as he knew that his death was inevitable. Naruto reached the now downed fallen angel and slammed his foot on Kokabiel's back, which made the fallen angel to lay flat on the ground. Lifting his foot from his back, Naruto slammed it again on the crow's head so hard that a loud crunch echoed throughout the battlefield, indicating that the fallen angel's skull has been fractured. Before Kokabiel could even cry out in pain, Naruto had already grabbed his wings. Wings that the fallen angel was so proud of, wings that signified their rank, wings that Naruto hated so much. The moment Kokabiel felt his wings being grabbed, he knew exactly what was about to happen. So, in order to save himself from that particular humiliation, he collected whatever power he had and lifted his head from the ground, ignoring the pain coursing through his whole body, especially his head, and looked at the blonde standing above him. Tears were streaming down his cheeks, blood dripping from his nose and his face all muddy. In a desperate tone, he pleaded to Naruto, Please, don't." His sentence was cut short by Naruto, who looked at him with his cold, emotionless eyes and said, "You are not worthy of these." With a powerful tug, Naruto plucked all the 10 wings at once. "Argh!" screamed the fallen angel to the very heavens as immeasurable pain shot through his back. The devils nearby winced hard when they heard the shrill cry. Naruto threw the wings aside. The moment they touched the ground, they started burning and soon there was nothing left of them. He then bent downwards to take a look at the pathetic face of the now whimpering fallen angel. He grabbed his hair and lifted his head up to make sure that he was eye to eye with him. "Yo, you add devil, aren't you?" Kokabiel muttered weakly. Naruto could tell that the crow didn't have much time left. So, being the gentleman that he is, he decided to answer his question. "Yes, I am," he replied in a voice devoid of any emotion. Then why have you been working WW with the fallen angels?" Kokabiel further inquired, his eyes almost closing, as he barely clung to consciousness. "Because I made a promise to someone," Naruto replied curtly. Kokabiel gave a dry chuckle, "So that damn Lucifer was right about you. Yo, you are Naruto Fenix. The one W who was responsible for the destruction of the whole Lucifod. You are much more of a monster than I am." Kokabiel spat. Naruto didn't reply this time and remained silent. Having heard the fallen angel, Naruto stood up calmly and replied, "If you are done, then allow me to give you a very painful yet a very fast death." Naruto opened his palm and tiny fireballs appeared on the tips of his fingers. Soon, those tiny fireballs started converging at the center of his palm to form a bigger, brighter fireball. This, however, wasn't just normal fire manipulation. This was Hellfire manipulation. To put it simply, it was like taking normal fire manipulation to a whole new level. Time for a history lesson. The Hellfire manipulation allows the user to generate and control the cursed flames of hell, which can completely destroy anything. Hellfire can cause excruciating pain upon contact or in some cases, instant death. They were kinda like Amaterasu, aka the Black Flames, in nature, except the fact that they didn't burn continuously for 7 days and 7 nights. Hellfire was used for instant results. Naruto first thought of renaming it to Dark Fire Manipulation, but seeing that his fire was golden of all colors, he decided to drop that name. This particular manipulation had various limitations. Firstly, the flames created are very difficult to control, and may cause lethal backfire if not handled properly. Second came the compatibility. This was a very important factor when it came to learning Hellfire manipulation. If one is not compatible with the Hellfire, she will get burned by them, leading to their immediate death. Thirdly, these flames were inextinguishable by normal measures, making it even more difficult for the user to control them. However, if one was to learn it correctly and control them perfectly, this power alone was enough to put her at the same level as an ultimate class devil. So, due to Hellfire's dangerous nature, this form had been declared as forbidden by the very first Fenix, as even she herself was not able to perfect it. And yes, the first Fenix is a woman. A rather arrogant one if someone was to ask Naruto. Sometimes Naruto wondered if his little brother Riser had been taught by her of all people. If that was the case, then he could understand the reason behind Riser being an arrogant ass. In order to learn the Hellfire manipulation, Naruto had locked himself in the basement of his house for 2 weeks straight. The basement was a very safe place which was specifically made for these type of experimentation. Imagine everyone's surprise when 2 weeks later he came up with a perfect golden ball in his hand with a tint of black at the very core of it. It looked like a tiny version of the sun, and the amount of energy that was being contained within that small ball was also incredible. It was enough to level the whole Fenix mansion 5 times over. Although, Naruto admitted that it would have taken him more than a couple of weeks to learn if he had been alone. However, he had been helped by a certain someone who was too persistent to leave him alone, even when he told her that he didn't need her help. Now then, coming back to the present, Naruto took hold of the golden ball. It was barely the size of a golf ball in one hand and used the other hand to lift up the head of the fallen angel, and just like a mother would feed her child, Naruto fed the golden ball of energy very gently to the barely alive fallen angel, who unconsciously swallowed it. The second the ball went inside Kokabiel's stomach, his droopy eyes opened wide and he started screaming like a banshee. He could feel his insides melting slowly and painfully. He kept on screaming and shouting until the golden ball inside of him exploded, killing him instantly. The blast was so big that it took out a good chunk of the academy in the process. He's dead. Well, probably for the better, Naruto said to himself as he stood in the crater that was made by the blast. Definitely, for the better, he heard a voice inside his head. The fire wall separating him and the little devils, exorcists, disappeared, and so did the heavy pressure that had kept them pinned to the ground during the entire fight. They all gave a sigh of relief. The ones who had been unconscious earlier had also woken up a few moments ago, only to be slammed down again by the enormous pressure. They were glad that it was over. Slowly, they all stood up, dusted themselves, checked each other for injuries, all the while staring at the man in front of them with sheer amazement for being able to defeat such a powerful fallen angel so quickly. While they may have been fighting the fallen angel beforehand, it was not like they were even able to put a scratch on him. Although Rias, her peerage, and the 2 church members who were on the ground were not able to see what happened, except for the blinding golden light that flashed just before the blast, Sona and her peerage had seen the entire thing clearly. They all were impressed and scared at the same time. Impressed because of his skills and scared because of his brutality. The moment the fight was over and the pressure had been lifted, Sona along with her peerage quickly made their way towards Rias' group to provide whatever help they can. Making sure each and everyone was fine, the young ones noticed the man turned his head towards them ever so slightly before he turned it around just as quickly. Sona meanwhile had her eyes fixated on the man in front of them who, as of now, was walking towards them. She had to know who he was. Solving the puzzle, mystery, was part of being EsssCeee. The gears inside her head were already working, trying to figure out who the mysterious figure was. Why was it that the guy seemed so familiar? Perhaps it was the devil-like energy she felt, or maybe it were those big-ass swords on his back, or maybe it was the golden ball thingy. As Naruto neared them, he sighed, knowing full well that the younglings would want some answers. Rias because she had the Gremory curiosity and Sona because she had the EsssCeee brains. He could obviously ignore them, but it wouldn't be much entertaining that way. The more closer he came, the more clearer his appearance became. Now everyone could see that he was wearing a fox look-alike mask with only a single hole for the eye through which a bright blue eye could be seen. A hood was draped over his head and of course 2 big-ass swords that were strapped to his back. The swords definitely caught the interest of Kiba, Zenobia and Irina. All in all, he looked like a bounty hunter of sorts. Yahoo tilde, young devils and exorcists. How you doin' tilde? He said in a childish and an excited tone, making them sweat drop a little. We would like to ask a lot of questions, but before all that, thank you for saving us. Had it not been for you, we would have been killed. Rias whispered to him in a small voice, giving him a small bow at the end. As if imitating her, everyone else followed suit and gave Naruto a bow of their own. Now please tell me, just who are you? Questioned Rias. Her curiosity getting the better of her. Everyone waited for a response from their mysterious savior. After a moment of silence they heard his voice. I'm an ally, so to speak. I was told by a certain individual to interfere in the fight if it got too dangerous for kiddos like you. No tilde, wait, I did it so that I could add another cadre level angel to my kill list. Yes tilde, that's exactly what I did, MMMHMMM. Naruto talked more to himself than the devils standing in front of him. "So you're a devil?" Rias asked him. "That should be obvious given the nature of my energy." Naruto answered, his voice sounding more deeper than before. "Then are you a reincarnated one or an official one?" questioned Sona. He let out a low chuckle at her question. "I think, you already know the answer to that after watching the whole fight." He winked at her. "So a high-class devil. Now tell me, what was that golden ball thingy that you—" Naruto clammed Sona's mouth shut with his fingers. "Shish. Sarah has taught you well, Sona, however, you still have a long way to go," Naruto said in a calm tone as he ruffled Sona's hair, who was surprisingly okay with it. Now Sona wasn't usually like this, all touchy and whatnot, especially with strangers of all people, but the moment this man's palm touched her head, a serene feeling washed over her whole body. She had never felt so calm in her whole life. A faint blush appeared on her cute little face. The other devils nearby could only gape at the scene, not exactly used to seeing Sona like this. Before she could lose herself even more, Sona came back to reality when she realized that the mysterious person has taken her sister's name. "You know my sister?" Sona asked, looking surprised while the small blush was still very much visible. "Well, I actually know a lot of people, practically everybody, and that's all the answers you are getting tonight. So, go home. Your family should be worried about you or something." Naruto shooed the younglings off and himself disappeared from the scene, leaving behind a confused and a stunned audience. "Don't you all realize who he was, young devils?" Suddenly the voice of Diedrich came from Issei's gauntlet. Rias replied, but the rest remained silent, trying to think if they knew that guy. Sona, however, had her suspicion. She just needed some sort of proof to put forward her point. Really now, if that golden light and the devil-like energy was anything to go by, I would say it was certain Fenix. Then there was the firewall and finally the big-ass swords. "Do I need to pronounce the name now, Diedrich's tone dripped with amusement. "2 big-ass swords. Golden energy. Fire user. Blue eye." Then it suddenly hit everyone, maybe except for Issei and the exorcists, like a ton of bricks on the head as they all said together, "Fuuuuuuuck." They just met the strongest devil to ever live and they didn't even recognize it before it was too late. Now they needed to report to the underworld quickly, to give the elders a happy news. Naruto smirked from the rooftop as he looked at their reaction. As expected, he knew that Diedrich would recognize his energy signature, he can't hide that. Though he wondered where the white one was. Has Azazel decided not to send him or what? Meh, who cares? He had other important things to worry about, like making an entry in the underworld and greeting his beloved family. Hierarchy has always been an important aspect of a society. If we consider a society to be a group of individuals of the same species who cooperate with each other for the benefit of the group as a whole, then it is reasonable to say that all societies are hierarchical to some degree. The very same can be said about the Devil's Society. The Devil Society was composed of numerous clans, or as some would say households, pillars. These clans were given certain rankings on the basis of their abilities and skills. The rankings went something like this: Great King, Archduke, Prince, Duke. Great King being the highest, followed by Archduke, Prince, and then finally by Duke. Way before the Civil War, the only clans that held the rank of Great King were Lucifer, Leviathan, Beelzebub, Asmodeus and Baal. When our dear protagonist became familiar with this particular information, he straight up went to the then leader of the underworld and questioned him. That on what basis were these clan rankings given? Rizivom, being the sadistic ass that he is, told him that, "It's all about power, my dear Naruto-kun tilde." Naruto had literally taken Rizivom's word to heart, and a few years later, Fenix household was also added to the list of the highest-ranked clans of the underworld with the title of Great King. The situation, however, changed after the Civil War. The Lucifer, Leviathan, Beelzebub and Asmodeus clans were no more except for their heirs and heiresses who were on the run for the time being. The Fenix had to deal with the disappearance of Naruto. Therefore, out of all the clans that held the rank of Great King, Baal clan was the only one that hadn't lost any major or important member, and because of that, they became the highest-ranked clan after the Civil War. Just below the Baal clan were the clans through which came the current Satans of the underworld. These clans being Gremory, Ceee, Astaroth and Glacia Labelas respectively. They were given the rank of Archduke. Fenix clan too was demoted to its previous rank, Archduke, due to obvious reasons. Below these were some other clans like Belial, Agaras, Paimon, etc. that held the rank of Prince and Duke, respectively. Coming back to the present, we find two heirs or rather heiresses of above-mentioned clans running hurriedly towards their respective homes in order to report about the recent happenings in Kuo. These two were none other than Sona Ceee and Rias Gremory. After a lengthy discussion in Kuo, both of them had decided to return to the underworld to deliver this particular news. Usually they would have sent someone else to do this sort of job, but this time they decided to do it themselves because they were pretty darn sure that this piece of information was going to create a whole lot of chaos in the underworld. And they simply can't wait to see that. And believe me, they weren't disappointed at all. Ceee household. Say that again, sister. Say that again? Came the shout of one Serafall Leviathan. Serafall Leviathan can be best described as an extremely beautiful girl, whose appearance resembled that of a teenager. She had long black hair that were tied into twin tails. She also had a childlike body, albeit with large S. However, there was a very good reason behind her rather strange appearance. Despite her childish looks, she was the strongest female devil in existence, for now. And as the name suggests, she was also one of the four great Satans. Before she was given the title of Leviathan, she was known as Serafall Ceee, the heir of Ceee household, but now, the said title belonged to Sona Ceee, Serafall's little sister. I said that we were saved by Naruto Fenix. Sona stated once again. She really loved the looks of shock, surprise present on the faces of her usually composed and dignified family. Are you sure it was him, Sona? Asked Lord Ceee, his gaze turning towards her youngest daughter's, Queen. Tsubaki merely nodded her head in agreement. Lord Ceee looked like a man in his mid-30s. He had black hair and a pair of black eyes that neither of his children had inherited. He wore rather casual clothes. His choice of clothing and the way of talking made it easy for one to understand that he was a laid-back person. Can you tell us anything about him that might help us in confirming it? Lady Ceee asked Sona. Lady Ceee was basically the mature, older version of Sona, having same length hair and similar-looking glasses that were resting on top of her head. Well, we weren't able to see his face to be exact, but he definitely had blue eyes. And was using fire just like a Fenix member would. He also had two big-ass swords like we saw in the photos and golden ball thingy that I know nothing about. He basically humbled Kokabiel before killing him, and by the looks of it, he wasn't even trying. Sona said in an excited tone which clearly went against her usual persona. She could now understand why Sirzechs and the others have described him as a badass. The term suited this devil perfectly. Her parents nodded their heads and looked at one another with smiles etched on their faces. It's definitely him. Lady Ceee said. He is the only devil I know who can use the golden ball thingy, as you call it. It's called Hellfire manipulation. We must let the Fenix family know about it, immediately. Lord Ceee said aloud. Lady Ceee replied with another nod, all the while wondering about Relina's reaction when she would hear about her missing son. Ruto-kun tilde. They all heard a mumble. Sona, Tsubaki and the others turned around to look at Sarafal, whose bangs were obscuring her face, making it hard for the onlookers to read her expression. Before anyone could blink, say or do anything, Sarafal appeared right in front of Sona and grabbed her by the shoulders. How is he, little sister? Did he seem all right? Sarafal asked in a desperate, pleading tone. This sudden change in Sarafal's behavior took Sona by surprise. All right, this is quite a development. Sona thought to herself before she skillfully got out of her sister's grasp and fixed her glasses. He seemed fine, actually he was more than fine. He seemed to recognize me. He also said, Sarah has taught you well, Sona. She replied, trying to imitate Naruto while quoting his words. And then he touched my head and all of a sudden it. Before she could complete her sentence, Sarafal clipped her lips with her fingers and said. Felt calm tilde. Sona's eyes widened. Did Sarafal just read her mind or what? Not knowing what to do in a situation like this, she decided to go with a nod. It felt warm tilde. Sarafal continued in a soft voice. Sona nodded again. It made you feel, acknowledged tilde. Sona nodded yet again, but this time she had a light blush staining her cheeks as she recalled that particular moment. It's him all right, Sarafal screamed inside her mind as a loving smile appeared on her face. She then very slowly engulfed her little sister in a loving hug, which yet again left the current heiress of the household speechless. It was a well-known fact that a usual Sarafal hug meant wrapping her whole body around Sona's and squeezing tight, until she turns blue and green due to the lack of oxygen. However, this one was quite mature in nature. Let's just keep this particular information between the two of us, okay? Sarafal whispered into her sister's ear. Sona remained silent but gave one last nod. Sarafal then gently kissed her sister's cheek before letting her go. From the sidelines, Lord EsssCeee, Lady EsssCeee and Tsubaki could only wonder what the two sisters were talking about. And thank you for the information, Sarafal said to Sona and Tsubaki as she walked out of the room with a beautiful smile on her face. Lord and Lady EsssCeee smiled, knowing that their firstborn was happy with the news. With her gone, Lady EsssCeee turned towards her youngest with a questioning look on her face. There is one thing that I don't understand though. Why run when you can simply teleport? Lady EsssCeee asked Sona. Sona opened her mouth to provide her mother with an answer before she came to a sudden realization. She promptly closed her mouth shut. The more she thought about it, the more stupid it sounded. Why in the world was she running again? She could have easily teleported to her house. Not to mention they have freaking wings, and yet she chose to run of all things. So much for being a genius, she sighed to herself. Now that the hindsight was 20/20, the question that remained to be answered was, why didn't she? If she could have, then why didn't she? Perhaps it has something to do with a certain Fenix. Rubbing the bridge of her nose, fixing her glasses, she made her way out of the room quietly. Her queen following her shortly after. Inside the room, Lord and Lady EsssCeee chuckled to themselves. It was quite amusing to see their, oh so intelligent, daughter out of answers or ideas. And a very similar scene was going on inside the Gremory mansion. Phenex estate. The members of the Fenix family were having their dinner with big smiles etched on their faces. And yes, even the ever-scowling Riser seemed happy. Why you ask? Well, they just got informed that the Gremory heiress and the EsssCeee heiress were saved by a certain someone, and that certain someone happened to be Naruto Fenix, the pride of the Fenix household, the strongest devil ever blah blah blah. Or as the books would like to call him, the prince of the underworld. Mama, I've been willing to ask. Who was that white-haired girl with Oni-sama in the photo? Revel asked her mother. Relina's eyes darted towards her youngest as she took a moment to ponder upon the question. Now how was she supposed to answer that? The fact was that Relina knew exactly who that girl was. But talking about her was like opening age-old wounds that had taken centuries to heal. And after a certain incident, the mother and son duo had decided not to talk about her, at least not in the presence of others. Relina knew that the only option she had as of now was lying. And as much as she hated doing that, she had to, at least for now. I don't know much about her, except the fact that she was a member of the team that Rizivom created and that she was someone very close to your brother. She answered. Well, it wasn't a total lie. With that done, Relina was about to take another bite of her food when suddenly, the fire around the mansion that usually burned orange, started changing color. It went from orange to bright golden. The chiming of a bell rang throughout the estate. The siblings, not paying much attention to it, were about to continue their dinner until they heard the sound of metal hitting glass. They all looked up and were surprised to find their mother frozen in her place with both her mouth and eyes wide open. The very same could be said about Lord Fenix and a few of the old servants of the house. Riser and his peerage watched as the lady of the house hurriedly stood up from her chair, lifted her gown and started running towards the main gate of the mansion. A few seconds later, the whole mansion erupted in chaos. What the hell is going on? Asked Riser as his gaze went towards Ruval, who looked like he was in deep thought before he too stood up abruptly, startling the others. There is only one way to find out. Ruval replied, telling his peerage and Revel to follow him. Riser, copying his older brother, ordered his peerage to accompany him as they all dashed towards the gate. Near the main gate, a few minutes earlier, Naruto had teleported just outside his family house. Slipping past the guards like a professional thief, he entered the territory owned by his family. He halted in his movements when he heard the distinct sound of a very particular bell. This bell, as he remembered, was installed in the house by his parents to let them know that he had returned from a mission whenever he was late. He paid no attention to the change in the fire color. It was nothing new for him. It has always been like that ever since he was a kid. The fire around the mansion would always react to his energy. He had no idea why, and he didn't care either. Continuing his march towards the entrance, he sensed his mother, father, Ruval, Riser, Revel and many other energy signatures rushing towards the main gate. Naruto sighed, so much for the surprise. Relina along with Ronald were the first to appear outside, and they weren't disappointed when they saw a single person walking towards them. Soon, they were joined by the others as well. Ruval and the rest also took notice of the man walking towards them. The younger ones watched him with a critical eye as he slowly neared them. The only thing that they could observe from this distance was the said person's way of walking, and it was so much graceful that it made the damn Lucifer look like a child. It took Naruto a couple of seconds to reach his destination. Now that he was standing in front of everyone, it was easier to make out his appearance. Unlike a typical male Fenix, he didn't have untamed blonde hair, rather, he had silky golden hair that reached just past his neck. Among the blonde mop were a few silver strands. The new addition to his face was an eye patch resting over his left eye that made him look even more intimidating. His face can only be described as godly. Quite the irony, He was wearing high-collared gray and tan robes with gold trim, along with a large, flowing black toga draped around his torso that gave him a rather majestic look. All in all, he looked more like a deity than a devil. Now standing a few inches away from his parents, he turned around, as a doppelganger of him rose from his shadow, earning a surprised look from the people in front of him. Set around a barrier, I don't want anyone disturbing us, at least for a few days because it's family time tilde. He told his doppelganger, his tone smooth for someone of his stature, but it held authority nonetheless. The twin nodded and started walking towards the boundary of the estate. The real Naruto then turned back to face his parents. He could see the tears brimming at the corner of their eyes, something he hated seeing. "You're late, woman," Naruto said to his mother. "And you are not?" counter-questioned his mother as she held back a sob, tears already spilling from her eyes. He had half a heart to save these tears in a bottle. Because you know Fenix tears are considered very valuable and whatnot, but he let it slide. "Well then, what are you waiting for?" he asked with an amused look before he was tackled by his mother and father in a fierce hug. He could feel his toga getting wet because of his parents' tears, but he chose to ignore it and hugged them even tighter. This was perhaps the best thing about this life. He had parents that were alive and loved him very dearly. No offense to his parents in his previous life who also loved him to death, literally. It just felt good to grow up with a loving family, that's all. If it wasn't for his reputation as the strongest devil, he would have squealed like a little girl. He absolutely adored his parents. They were everything he could ask for and even more. He rubbed their backs soothingly with both his hands in order to calm them down when all of a sudden, he felt a burning sensation on his cheeks. Letting go of his father, he touched his face and was genuinely surprised to find out that he too was crying. How long has it been since he last cried? 2 centuries. His mother looked up to see her son's face. Her hands caressing his cheeks as she wiped away his tears which were burning his skin all the while taking in his every feature. Her hands then slowly started moving towards his covered eye. Naruto made no attempt to stop his mother from removing the eye patch. It was wet anyway and needed to be changed. Imagine her and everyone's surprise when they saw a metallic purple eye with rings spread throughout the whole eye and 3 commas in the first 2 rings. As much as he loved the shocked look on everyone's face, he needed to keep this eye a secret, so he clenched it shut and looked at his mother carefully with his right eye. "Ha, you're old, woman," were the words that came out of his mouth as he broke the moment of silence. Relina's eyebrows twitched, she knew her son wasn't done. On the sidelines everyone's eyes widened and jaws dropped when they heard what the strongest devil said to Lady Fenix. "And, oh my goodness, is that a wrinkle I see there?" he said, trying to touch her mother's cheek, who backslapped his hand. Both father and son duo started laughing at the lady's expense, who looked like she was ready to kill someone. No one calls a woman old and lives to see another day, especially a devil woman at that. Relina heard snickering coming from behind and she knew that others were also laughing at her. Well, not at her exactly, more like at the current situation. She glanced at them menacingly and that was enough to shut them up. "That Ha 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 was a good one, son. Ronald told his son. You too. Relena said in a dangerous tone as orange aura blazed around her, her fists shaking, scaring everyone except for Naruto, of course, who casually walked towards his siblings. And oh my why? How can I forget about my cute little siblings, Tilda? As he grabbed the three of his siblings in a big embrace. They didn't even bother resisting and let Naruto do whatever he wanted to. Soon, they too smiled as they hugged back their big brother, crying silently. It felt so warm in his embrace. Revel snuggled more deeper into his chest, trying to take in as much warmth as she can. Relena and Ronald smiled, seeing the bonding moments between the four siblings. Soon they too joined the embrace. Few moments later, the family was now seated around the dining table, finishing their left dinner. While the others ate, Naruto was busy studying everyone in the room. His eye first went towards his brothers and sister, who kept on squirming under his piercing gaze. They wanted nothing more than to find a dark corner and hide themselves so that their big brother can't look at them. His gaze was so cold that it could rival that of Itachi's. Graphia got no shit on this, but then again, he was the one who taught her to keep her emotions in check. His eyes then darted towards the peerages of his brother, and he was disappointed yet again as they were enormously weak. The peerage members tore their gazes away from him, trying to look as innocent as they could. Relena, seeing the discomfort of the other people in the room, elbowed her son, whose concentration was broken as he raised his visible eyebrow towards his mother. Stop scaring them. She scolded her son. How am I scaring them? Questioned Naruto. You are glaring at them. I'm not glaring at anyone. Yes, you are. Naruto was about to retort but clenched his mouth shut as he knew that he wasn't going to win this conversation. Son Tilda, she said in a sing-song voice while waving her finger in front of him as she saw her son's defeated face. It seems like you have forgotten over the centuries that you haven't won a single argument against me, Tilda. She kissed her son's cheek. Fuck, was all he could say as he literally had forgotten that fact. There were two women in his life against whom he had never won, at least when it came to arguments, though he had to duck his head a bit to not get hit by a flying fork. Courtesy of his mother. What the hell is wrong with you, woman? I thought you said it was alright for me to curse after 18. I'm over 200 now. Naruto shouted at his mother. Relena sat still with her eyebrows twitching madly. I don't remember saying anything like that. Relena calmly replied. Really now? I remember that day very clearly. It was the day I defeated you for the first time in a spar. Made you eat dust in what, 3 minutes? It should have been the fucking headline of the newspaper the very next day saying, a fucking 5-year-old defeated the lady of the prestigious house of Fenix, ha. Naruto replied back, getting into his mother's face. It was moments like these with his mother where he truly lost his composure. Ho ho ho. That definitely didn't happen. It seems that living alone for 200 years had fucking messed with your memories. Relena yelled back. Please woman, my memories are just fine. Perhaps you really are getting old. Should I start calling you old hag? No, wait, you already are one? Naruto replied back to his mother. I'm sorry. What the fuck did you just call me, you little twerp? Relena shouted, losing her temper. The rest of the people could only watch back and forth from Lady Fenix to the Super Devil. Their jaws hanging low as they heard the mother and son cursing each other. Lord Fenix and a few old servants had a fond smile on their faces as they saw the usual banter between Lady Fenix and her son. Who was the one running naked in the garden saying that he found fucking Narnia? Screamed Lady Fenix as she grabbed Naruto by his collar. Oh yeah, and who was the first one to pass out with a nosebleed? Seriously, my own mother is a damn pervert. Naruto screamed back. Her mother at least had the decency to look embarrassed, but that didn't stop her from yelling something even more embarrassing about his son. As the verbal fight went on, the other Fenixes decided to talk to their father. Sue, I suppose this was an everyday thing, given the look on your face, father? Ruval asked, pointing towards the two yelling people. You can say that. Lord Fenix replied with a warm smile. Well, at least mother looks happy. Riser added. Lord Fenix nodded his head. It seemed that the spark that his wife had lost after Naruto's disappearance was back once again, and he couldn't be happier. Aren't you going to stop them? Revel asked her father, who shook his head negatively. I am not stupid or crazy. I did it once, long ago, and after that I had to dodge all type of fire and sword attacks for 11 hours straight. I sure as hell don't want to experience that again. Ronald shivered remembering that incident. The mother and son had hunted him down that day. Sit down, old woman, and you four. Naruto pointed towards the other family members and continued, come back here and sit. I've got some questions for y'all. Others quickly nodded and followed his instructions. Now then, first question. Why the hell do we have so many servants in our house and why are most of them women? He questioned. As if on instinct, everyone turned their heads toward Riser, whose face went pale while Naruto's lone eye narrowed at him. Gulping, he immediately stood up from his seat, dropped down to his knees and slammed his head on the ground, cracking it in doing so. I'm so sorry, please don't get angry, big brother lord, he shouted. The mother and father could only look at him with pity. Naruto kept his blank gaze at him for a few seconds as the room became eerily quiet. Do something like this again and we would be one Fenix less. Naruto replied with a calm voice, causing others to stiffen. Hi, big brother lord. Riser squeaked out, ego be damned. He had no intention of getting on the bad side of the strongest devil to be ever born. What type of title is that anyway? Naruto questioned curiously. At least he's being respectful. You know what, I expected you to be here when little Revel was born. You always said you wanted a little sister. We were hoping to see you there. Naruto's mother said to him, and Ronald nodded his head. He too wanted his eldest to be there when all his siblings were born. Revel meanwhile blushed at the revelation. Naruto gave his mother a smirk and brought her into an one-armed hug. I was there, woman. As a matter of fact, not only on Revel's birthday but on everyone else's too. See, you really are getting old. He told her, making her gain a few tick marks on her head before she took a few deep breaths to calm herself down and was about to question him about what he said, but Ruval beat her to that. You were here? What do you mean by that, brother? He asked. Well, where do you think the ring that you are wearing, the bracelet Riser's wearing and the pendant Revel's wearing came from? He asked, wiggling his eyebrow towards his now wide-eyed siblings. Each of the three gazed at the mentioned piece of ornament, thinking back to the time when they wore it for the first time. They had simply picked their respective ornament because they thought that it looked kind of cool in comparison to the others, but now, it seemed like they were somehow made to choose it, not forcefully of course. But all three of them choosing an ornament made by their older brother can't be a coincidence. Perhaps it was an innate connection that had made them choose it, who knows? The three siblings observed keenly as their ornament glinted bright gold for a second. They looked at their brother, who winked at them, causing them to stutter a weak yet heartfelt, "Thank you." The mother and father smiled lovingly at the sight, and so did the peerages of Ruval and Riser. They will keep on shining, so don't worry about that, unless I'm dead, that is. Naruto said as he crossed his hands behind his head and laid back on his chair. Had to keep the family safe, one way or another. They were more or less a protective charm sort of thing, imbued with his magic and a few seals that were to be activated in case their life was in danger. Also, you were there at the wedding day, weren't you? Roland asked his son. Just enjoying the humiliation. That reminds me of my next question. Why did you do it? I mean the whole arranged marriage shit. Naruto asked plainly. To bring the two houses closer. Lord Fenix replied, though it seemed he was a bit afraid if his little stutter was anything to go by. Nope, that's true, son. We just wanted to get the two powerful households together. Stop lying. Naruto looked directly into his father's eyes. He already knew the answer, but he wanted his father to admit it. Roland looked down for a moment and sighed. Nothing gets past his son, now does it? We wanted to mix the Baal's power of destruction and the Fenix immortality, the father admitted. We overthrew the old Satan faction because of their old methods, and now you are using the same old methods. Isn't that what you call a hypocrite? Naruto asked his parents. His mother gave a lame shrug and said, it was the elders, not us to be precise. We were about to cancel it until a certain someone interfered. Naruto quietly stood up from his seat and started taking steps away. He knew who was behind all this, but in order to confirm his suspicions, he stopped and asked his parents. It was her, wasn't it? It was more of a statement than a question. The way he spoke those words without any trace of emotion froze everyone around. Hell, some of the new servants of the house literally pissed themselves. When he got no response from his parents, he spoke in a deadly tone. That's it, I'm going to end her now. Before he could leave to finish the said task, he was stopped by his father's hand. He turned around to find his father giving him a rather pleading look. Don't, son. As much as I hate her, she is still my grandmother and as such your great-grandmother. It's because of this she keeps doing whatever she likes. How long do you intend to take blame for her actions? I don't care if she is the first lady of the house. Naruto told his father. Please, just promise me that you will not kill her. His father asked him while gripping his shoulder firmly. Naruto sighed in defeat. He knew that he can't go against his parents' wishes. Fine, Naruto replied before coming back to his seat. The rest stayed quiet knowing that it wasn't their place to interfere. Are you done with your questions? Relina asked his son, who looked at her weirdly. Well, yeah, pretty much, I guess. He shrugged. Then I believe it's my turn now. So, how do you plead, boy? She questioned menacingly. Plead? For what? Her tone going right over his head. How about the fucking fact that you disappeared for 200 years? Relina yelled at her son. I see you might have a point there, but the thing is that Naruto and Fenix never pleads to anyone. So, sorry woman, but that ain't happening. Naruto replied coolly. You think that you can simply come back whenever you want and we are going to welcome you with open arms? Just like that? Relina was about to explode. Her patience wearing thin. Well, you just did, didn't you? Was Naruto's smart-ass reply. That does it. You better start apologizing before I go apeshit on your ass. Relina announced, slamming her hands on the table. The other family members had already left the table a few minutes ago knowing what was about to happen. You can't do shit, woman. I'm smarter than you, stronger than you, and not to mention younger than you. Naruto said while evading a big fireball thrown at him by his mother. And just like that, another battle started between the mother and son duo. The onlookers could only sweat drop as they took notice of the collateral damage caused by their fight. An hour later, after their little fight, both of them had settled down. Relina with a satisfied look and Naruto with a sour look as he kept rubbing his ass. Like, why would anyone keep a hunter of all things in her pockets? Never mind that. Oh, and before I forget, where's Aunt Agatha? He questioned his family. I'm right here, Naru-chama. A new voice came from his behind, making him jump a little from surprise. He turned behind to see a beautiful brown-haired woman, wearing black and white maid dress. Just like every other servant in the house, she too had a curvaceous body. This person was Aunt Agatha, as Naruto used to call her. She was the head maid of the house. Naruto shared a rather strong familial bond with her. Well, one could say that he was close to every old servant of the family, but she in particular was more closer to him than the others. After all, she was the one that used to take care of him whenever his parents wouldn't be around. Not to mention she was a powerful ultimate class devil who was not interested in having a peerage of her own. Something Naruto appreciated greatly. Naruto immediately grabbed her in a big hug, which she wholeheartedly returned. He kissed her on the forehead like he always used to do when he was young. It seems you have grown, Naru-chama, Agatha said after ending the hug. Damn it, stop calling me that. It's annoying and childish, he told her. As you wish, Naru-chama. She bowed to him, earning a few snickers from the people around. Sue, is my room still alive? He asked her. I think you have forgotten after 2 centuries, Naru-chama, that you had an AI guarding your room. If we open it forcefully, your room will blow up. She replied dryly. I forgot about that. Weird. By the way, how are the kids? He questioned her. The kids are mighty fine, Naru-chama. One is in 5th standard and another is just a few months old. She replied. One of the reasons why she preferred this family over the others was that the servants weren't exactly treated as servants. It was like if they were to take their uniforms off, they could pass off as family members. They all had their own rooms in the mansion. The family members, except for a handful, themselves worked with them. Be it cooking, cleaning, gardening, you name it. Unlike some other houses that she had heard about, the members of this house liked getting involved in household chores. It was better than sitting idle, no? This is why they didn't have many servants in the first place. Now, she had heard about the Gremories and Seatrees and a few others' houses treating their servants the same way, which she thought was very generous of them. Was it weird that the high-ranking houses were the ones that treated their servants fairly? Not Bales though, she thought to herself. Yup, definitely not them. Naruto whistled. At least someone is getting lucky. And what about Mr. Husband, still looking for a job? He inquired further as they kept walking towards his room. Nope, became an instructor quite a while ago. She loved these little conversations that she got to have with the family members. Maybe not with Riser though, or the first lady of the house, or a few higher-ups. That's indeed nice. Thinking of getting your kids a peerage? While my elder one is interested in those raiding games, he hasn't openly expressed any sort of interest in having a peerage of his own. Guess we'll find out, she replied. A minute or two later they all were standing in front of his room. Naruto pressed his hand on the center of the door and it started scanning, much to the delight of others. Fingerprints match successful. Welcome back, young master. It's good to see you again after so many years. A male voice was heard by everyone. Good to hear from you too, Hector. Naruto replied to his AI. He pushed the door open and entered his room. He was kind of surprised to find all the things in the exact same way as they used to be. The room looked clean as well. How is it clean though? Naruto asked, to no one in particular. You applied runes or seals, as you like to call them, to keep it this way. Agatha replied. Ooh, all right then, good night. And you three meet me outside in the morning, and Riser if you do anything indecent with your peerage. Naruto left the threat hanging, making Riser go pale once again. With that everyone walked away in the direction of their rooms. However, Relina stayed behind. She looked around to make sure that everyone was gone before she looked at her son with a worried expression on her face and asked, Are you all right, son? Not really understanding his mother's question, he answered, I'm just fine, woman. You know, ever since her dia. I said, I'm fine, mother. Naruto spoke, not letting his mother complete that sentence. She wouldn't have wanted you to do all this, to be like this. Relina said to her son in a somber tone. Naruto gave her a dry look and replied, She would have wanted me to stay at home, cook the meals, wash the clothes, make bed for the kids, or do some other menial household chores. You're making it sound like it is a bad thing? She questioned with an amused look on her face. It's not. But given all the powers that I have, don't you think that I have certain responsibilities as well? That you do, my son, that you do. Relina tiptoed and kissed her son on the cheek. Just remember, you can't save everyone. I know, but I want to, Naruto mumbled to himself. She turned around ready to leave when a thought crossed her mind. Oh, and apparently the Gremories and the Sea Trees have named you the godfather to their kids. She told as she remembered that particular information. Naruto raised his only visible eyebrow and asked with genuine curiosity, why though? That's a terribly good question. Why would anyone name you of all people their kid's godfather? You're irresponsible, careless, not to mention you lack emotion. Alright woman, I understand. Now leave before another war breaks out. Next day. On the clearing outside the Fenix mansion stood Ruval, Riser and Revel facing their older brother Naruto. Lord and Lady Fenix along with the peerages of Ruval and Riser were standing on the sidelines in order to witness the fight between the strongest devil and his siblings. Right then, let's call it sibling bonding time, or you may even call it your evaluation test. Now, the test is simple, just come at me with everything you've got. Naruto stated in a challenging tone. Ruval and Riser quickly took a fighting stance while Revel stood behind them in order to provide support if needed. She knew that she wasn't much of a fighter, and she most definitely was not going to get into a hand-to-hand combat with the strongest devil of all people, so she decided to stay back in order to come up with a plan to help her brothers bring down their Oni-sama. She knew that they will be defeated. Eventually, the million-dollar question was how long can they stand against the monster of a devil that was in front of them. Riser, being the brash one, quickly sped off and approached Naruto, his fist covered with flames. Riser aimed his jab directly at Naruto's face only to get all the air punched out of his lungs. Riser's wide eyes traveled down to see his brother's fist embedded into his stomach. Naruto twisted his buried fist slowly and cruelly, making the gasping Fenix to scream internally. Naruto then grabbed Riser's collar with one hand and brought him to an eye-to-eye level. Using his free hand, he delivered a strong punch to his right cheek. This is for disgracing the family name. Another jaw-shattering punch landed on Riser's cheek as teeth and blood flew out of his mouth. This is for losing to a dragon of all things. And this, Naruto kicked him directly in the solar plexus, is for being an arrogant ass. A mere second later, he was sent tumbling backwards a couple of feet before Revel stopped him by appearing behind him. Riser laid flat on the ground trying to get up though with difficulty as his feet and hands wobbled. What the F was up with those movements? His Fenix regeneration already kicking in, but that doesn't mean he didn't feel any pain. That single kick itself was enough to knock any high-class devil out. Ruval meanwhile readied his sword. The sword was given to him by his mother on his 10th birthday. The weapon was beautiful and rather big compared to a usual one, a bit curved at the tip. It had a Fenix house symbol on the hilt. Naruto whistled. "Look, a fellow swordsman," he said playfully. Ruval wasted no time in appearing before his brother with speed comparable to an ultimate-class devil and tried to slash him, to which Naruto merely sidestepped. Ruval tried once again, but the only thing he slashed was air. This process kept on going for a few minutes as Ruval started picking up more speed and his slashes became more dangerous and lethal by every second. Everyone watched in awe as the second eldest attacked the now heir of the house. They could feel the pressure in the air increasing as dust started picking up where the two brothers were fighting. After avoiding the attacks for nearly 5 minutes, Naruto thought of annoying his brother some more. Moving a bit to his left to let the strike go past him, Naruto twirled around and butterfly kicked Ruval straight in the face, sending him away twice as fast as Riser. Ruval gritted his teeth as he felt immense pain shoot through his left cheek where he was just kicked. He let his wings of fire out and twisted himself in the air to correct his posture. "If this is the level of an ultimate class these days, then I'm disappointed," Naruto said flatly. Before he could say any more, Ruval again appeared in front of him, his both hands gripping his sword tightly as he applied his fire powers to his sword and charged it to the max. Naruto blinked, seeing the sudden burst in Ruval's speed and the technique as well. He remembered doing the same thing with his sword back when he was 10. Ruval, seeing him distracted, sent the fully charged sword directly at his face. The sword connected and a large blast echoed throughout the Fenix mansion. Everyone had to cover their faces to prevent the dust from reaching their eyes. Soon the dust cleared and what everyone saw made their eyes widen in horror. There stood Naruto in a big gaping crater with his thumb and pointing finger holding the tip of Ruval's sword as the fire covering the sword slowly faded away. Ruval's hands were still on the hilt, his head bowed down and bangs obscuring his face. When the attack had connected, Ruval thought that finally he had been able to land a hit on his brother, though a millisecond later another thought crossed his mind and he questioned himself, wasn't that a bit too easy? While he knew that the attack wasn't enough to defeat his idol, but this was utterly shameful. His attack had practically done nothing except for creating a crater, which meant nothing given the opponent still seemed fresh as fuck. He, who was considered one of the best among the ultimate class devils, his most powerful attack had done 0 damage to his brother. Now he can see why his brother was called the strongest devil ever born. That was a good attack, Ruval. It would have KO'd anyone with similar strength as of yours, but you need to do better. Naruto broke the silence with his words. Keeping his hold on the sword tight, he kicked Ruval's hands, making him lose his grip on the sword, which Naruto immediately caught with his other hand. Naruto lifted his brother by his neck using his free hand, squeezing it ever so slightly and kneed him in the gut, making Ruval cough blood. Before he could land a few more hits on him, he had to avoid a huge fireball, courtesy of both Riser and Revel. He let Ruval drop and turned his attention towards them. That attack would have caused more damage to him than me. A rather poor choice to tactics, I would say. And do you actually think that you can use fire against me? Questioned Naruto. I knew that you would either avoid that attack or take it head on, given the fact that you are holding back. Meaning you don't intend to injure us too seriously, which is something to capitalize on. And apparently talking also works as a distraction, Revel stated calmly, her eyes narrowing at her brother. Naruto tilted his head sideways as he found out that Ruval had been taken back by Riser during the talking. Of course he had seen it happening, but he let it pass, letting her believe that she had been able to pull off whatever she was trying to pull off, successfully. The game would be no fun otherwise. Though it didn't stop a small smile to break through his lips as he became a bit more interested in this little squabble of theirs. To think that someone so young would be able to bullshit their way out, especially given the situation, most interesting indeed. But it was time perhaps to crush their hopes. I see, then I guess it's my turn now. Frost Lake, Naruto mumbled and slammed both his hands on the ground, and soon the land on which they were fighting started to turn into ice. The ice raced towards the downed siblings at an almost impossible speed, converting anything and everything in the path to ice. Ice style? Squeaked Ruval's queen from the sidelines as she rubbed her eyes to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. How is that even possible for a Fenix? Asked another one. A Fenix using ice style, it was totally preposterous, or as some would say, blasphemous. Lady Fenix turned towards them with a smile and replied, like I said before, he is special. What the foo, was all the siblings could think before they too were turned into popsicle. They were so busy comprehending what was going on, that they weren't able to dodge the attack at all. Naruto calmly took his hands off the ground and started making his way towards the now frozen opponents. Is that it? Is this really the best you can do? And I could have sworn I was starting to feel something. He started talking knowing fully well that they can hear him loud and clear. Oh no, wait, I can still feel it. What is this? Ah, I see now, this feeling, it's disappointment. Naruto muttered the last word ghostly. I don't want to sound like a condescending ass, but you all are pathetic at best. You are not even worthy for being called a Fenix. Hell, you shouldn't even be a high-class devil. Just because you were born in a prestigious household doesn't mean you are high class. Naruto could see Ruval's eyes cracking. He knew that Ruval would be the first to break out of it given that he was the most powerful out of the three, so he continued his lecture. Look at yourself. You are useless, can't even break out of an ordinary ice spell. It would be better if you remain like that. He ended with a mocking tone. He could see the angry looks on both kings and their peerages. His parents still had a smile on their faces as they knew what their eldest was trying to do. Before he could continue, Ruval broke out of his ice and dropped to the ground panting heavily. Ruval wanted to fight back his brother for his harsh words but couldn't find any strength to do so. It had taken all of his strength just to get out of that shell. Just what was that ice? He had fought ice-style users before and he didn't remember it being this difficult. Ordinary ice spell, he said. What in the world? A minute later Riser too broke out and laid flat on the ground trying to regain his senses. He was barely conscious to form any sort of coherent thought, let alone fight back. Now the only one remaining was Revel. Naruto knew she had untapped potential, but to bring it out, he had to do something because he didn't want his family members to die in the upcoming war. Yes, you heard it right. A war, which was inevitable. So, as cruel or as harsh as it was, he had to do this now. Better safe than sorry. Now the only one left is you, Revel. Don't you want to prove that you are also worthy of being part of this family, or are you just going to stay there crying and whimpering about how weak and powerless you are? Naruto smirked inwardly as he felt a sudden spike in Revel's power. Smoke started rising from the ice shell. Just one more push should do it. You can do it, Revel. You have the potential to do so. Come on, I know you are better than this, after all you are my little sister. If you remain like that even a minute longer you will die without any purpose, without any meaning. Is that what you want to happen? Don't you want to make father, mother and everyone else proud? That was it. Enough, Revel yelled as she shattered the ice shell, sending splinters everywhere and shot up in the sky like a rocket. She halted mid-air when she felt her magic reserves being drained at a rapid pace. She looked down to see the members of her family looking at her with wide eyes. She wondered if she had done anything wrong. Naruto smirked while the people on the ground had to gasp in amazement when they saw the now transformed Revel. Her fire, which was orange a few moments ago, was completely blue now. Her wings were made up of blue fire, her eyes shining blue just like her brother's. She looked down at her eldest brother and smiled weakly as she could feel herself losing consciousness, and a second later, she was falling down. Before anyone could do or say anything, Naruto was already beside her. Making sure that she was comfortable in his arms, he landed down softly. Well, that was much more entertaining than I thought it would be. You all did okay-ish, but you need almost endless amount of training which will be given by yours truly, and don't worry about what I said earlier. It's called trash talking. It usually brings out the best in people and sometimes, the worst. Or vice versa. Although, what I said was partly true. He told his barely conscious brothers and their peerages. Hearing that, Ruval and Riser too let darkness consume them. Take them inside and let them sleep. They need it, Naruto said. The peerage members bowed to him and almost immediately, both Riser and Ruval were taken away by their respective peerages. Blue flames, huh? Relina said to Naruto. I knew it, our daughter is awesome. Ronald said happily. Just because it's different doesn't exactly means that it's better. I need to study those flames first. They might as well be dangerous for her, but for now, she needs to recuperate. Naruto said as he started walking inside while carrying his sister. That wasn't normal ice, now was it? Relina asked Naruto, who chuckled and shook his head. That was crystallized ice, even Sarah and Graphia would have trouble getting out of it. Naruto told them truthfully. They reached Revel's room and Naruto gently laid her on the bed before kissing her on the forehead. You did really well, Revel. I'm already proud of you. Naruto muttered quietly. He then placed 2 of his fingers on her head and a faint blanket of golden energy covered her form. She smiled in her sleep, feeling much better than before. Just as they were about to leave, Naruto felt his sleeve being tugged from behind. He turned around to find her sister looking at him with barely opened eyes. Please stay here with me, Oni-sama. She mumbled sleepily. Naruto looked back at his father and mother, who nodded their heads and left the room with small smiles on their faces. Naruto turned towards his cute little sister and told her to move a bit as he climbed on the bed and settled himself right beside her before Revel rested her head on his clothed chest with a small blush spread across her face. Naruto smiled down at her and caressed her back, lulling her to sleep. Just like Kuno, huh? Naruto thought to himself as he let his mind wander somewhere else, never noticing the big smile on her sister's face. Somewhere in Kyoto, inside a big shrine, a young girl can be seen resting beside her mother. Both looked tired because of the day's work and were just about to retire for the night. At first glance they looked like a normal mother and daughter duo, however, that was untrue. In reality, they were a pair of 9-tailed yokai. Kuno was the name of the young girl and she was the daughter of Yasaka, who was the ruler of yokai faction. Yasaka can be described as a beautiful woman with a voluptuous figure and bright golden hair with similar colored eyes, ears and tails. Her daughter Kuno too shared the same features, except the fact that she wasn't as developed as her mother because she was only 12 at the moment, soon to be 13. Both of them were lying next to each other, thinking about the same man. I hope you will come back soon to meet me, father. It has been quite a while since you last visited. I really miss those secret meetings that we used to have. Oh, and I owed those presents, by the way. She paused in between her thoughts and scowled, and it took me a while to figure out your reasons for leaving, but now, I do understand why you can't be here all the time, but thanks for everything and I love you, Papa. Kuno thought to herself before she closed her eyes and drifted to sleep. Unknown to Kuno, her mother was also thinking about the same man. A man who had been an emotionless ass in the beginning. A man who had then turned into her teacher. A man with whom she had fallen in love with, and a man who gave her the most precious gift of all, her daughter. It has been 13 years now, dear. You still haven't showed up. Am I not good enough for you, or am I too weak to be with you? But then again, she paused in her thoughts to look at her dozing daughter and smiled sadly. I haven't even told you about your own daughter. What type of a mate or a lover am I? She didn't realize that tears were already falling from her eyes. She knew that Naruto wasn't one to leave without reason. So, there must be something that was keeping him away. She just hoped that he would come home someday, perhaps sooner than later. She had kept the identity of Kuno's father a secret from most of the people, including Kuno. She had her reasons for doing so, and the most important being Naruto's reputation. He was literally known throughout the supernatural world either because of his deeds or because of his incredible powers. She wondered how others would react if they knew that Kuno was his daughter. Then suddenly, a thought crossed her mind. Now that I think about it, she never once asked about it either. Yasaka wondered. Her daughter was a really mysterious girl, just like her father. She never once in her life had asked about her father, and that meant one of two things. Either she knew who he was or she simply didn't care. Yasaka hoped that it was the former than the latter. Soon, she too started feeling sleepy. She rested her head beside her daughter's and closed her tired eyes. As if he can hear their thoughts clearly, Naruto muttered to himself, soon Yasaka, Kuno. Very soon, his fists clenching tight enough to draw blood. What? Missing that vixen of yours? A voice rang inside his mind. That's a stupid question, Kurama. Who wouldn't miss his own wife and daughter? Naruto replied to his old partner in a matter-of-fact tone. Well, I miss her too. And to think that she would keep your identity a secret. She turned out to be a rather smart individual, Kurama said to his container. MMHMM. Not to mention her keeping Kuno's existence a secret from me. She thinks that I would be angry at her for giving birth to Kuno. That's absurd. Why would I be angry? Questioned Naruto weirdly. Why would he be angry for something he himself was a part of or something he himself was responsible for creating with her? Probably because you haven't visited her in the last 13 years, Kurama replied. You know that I can't. Not openly at least. Last time I tried, had to kill those members of old Satan faction without having Yasaka know about it, and also, it's hard to stay in someone else's territory without them knowing, especially when they are after your ass. Naruto told his companion. Ah yes, the Shinto gods. Bah, I hate their names. Reminds me too much of those thrice damned Uchihas, Kurama snorted. Naruto has been banned from entering the Shinto territory ever since he declined the offer of joining their ranks. Obviously Yasaka was not told about this because the gods knew how much Naruto meant to her. They were pretty sure that she would have left with him, if she knew that the real reason behind Naruto's sudden disappearance was her higher-ups. And this whole ordeal led to Yasaka thinking that Naruto had just abandoned her without any reason, and thus, her reason for keeping Kuno's existence a secret from him. And as much as Naruto wanted to kill those gods for this horseshit, he can't because that would jeopardize Yasaka and Kuno's safety since they were a part of Shinto faction. This was why he had to meet his daughter in secret. So, while meeting his daughter was a rather easy task, meeting Yasaka was a whole nother thing simply because she used to stay inside that shrine most of the time, and entering the shrine was like stepping into a hungry lion's den. Not that he can't take down that lion or anything, but it might just put others at risk, and he can't let that happen, no matter what. I will go back to them one day, Naruto said to himself. I believe we will. Putting that aside for now, I'm just glad that you chose a nine-tailed fox as a mate. She is powerful in her own right, and not to mention that body. Oh, and I love the way she pins you down whenever. Shut up, Naruto said in a strained voice before cutting off the mental link between them. Stupid furball. Whatever the hell happened to the old Kurama? All dark and brooding. Was everything perverted about this world, he wondered? Ever since the giant fox had woken up in this world, he had turned into a massive pervert. But meh, it was good to have him back. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.